Morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Pateo de Galais, the laboratory, day 3. Breakpoint, day 3. Who's pumped? Yeah. You're here. It's early. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here. We have an awesome program for today. I was so thrilled yesterday to see this place absolutely packed for Jump and Fire Dancer and all the great content, and we just roll on into today. It's going to be wonderful. If this is your first time at this venue, Pateo de Galais, this is the laboratory, the place for technical deep dives, workshops, and other great technical conversations. You have plenty of space for your laptops and for working. This is also the only venue where if it's a little too echoey and you're having trouble hearing, we have noise-canceling, sort of silent disco headsets. I see some already here in the front. You grab them, you put them on, cancels out all the noise, and you could just hear our microphones without any of the echo or reverb. So take advantage of that if you're having trouble hearing what's happening up on stage. As always here at Pateo, we have restrooms this way, refreshments behind me and around the venue. Lunch will be served, breakfast is already out, so please get yourself some food and drink so you stay hydrated and well-fed for all of our content today. We have a wonderful slate of events here today, but also there are 3 other venues, as you hopefully know, where content is happening all day. And if you'd like to take a little bit of time and explore the other venues, there are shuttles running on loops throughout the day. It is Monday here in Lisbon, so the traffic is a little heavier. We're expecting a little bit of rain in the afternoon, so if you're trying to get to another venue, make sure you leave plenty of time to get to that venue. But the shuttles will continue to run no matter what, no matter how bad the rain is and no matter how bad the traffic is. The day will end at around 6:50 at the Forum, which is Convento do Beato. And Raj and Anatoly will sort of summarize Breakpoint, have sort of a closing session, and then a closing ceremony and celebration this evening. You've probably seen it on the slides. An incredible slate of DJs. If you were here last year, the closing ceremony was absolutely insane. I expect more of the same this year, so please be sure to join us if you're not leaving town. Our first talk today is from my friend Chris at Dialect. I'm super happy that they're coming up on stage this morning. Dialect is going to talk about smart messaging and notifications. I work closely with them because I work at Solana Labs on the payments team, and notifications and messaging is key and core functionality that many of the wallets in the Solana ecosystem are starting to integrate so that everybody knows sort of what's happening in real time. But Chris is going to talk about use cases well beyond just notifications. So please join me in welcoming Chris from Dialect.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Thrilled to be here. This is definitely the best venue, if you ask me. All right, I'm Chris Osborne. I'm CEO at Dialect. We are super excited to tell you about this new specification that we just launched this week called Smart Messaging. So let's get into it. At Dialect, we believe that blockchain is going to eat the internet, and that Web3 is going to create experiences not possible in Web2. Since March, in our launch, our messaging and notifications open source developer tooling has been integrated across the Solana ecosystem. But what we're really excited about and what gets us up every day is what the future is going to look like. And for us, that's smart messaging. Smart messaging is a whole new way to interact through messaging. You can do all kinds of new things by making messages interactive. You can transfer tokens, you can mint NFTs, you can follow artists, bid on auctions, vote on proposals, buy merch, and anything else you can imagine right from the message. The reason this is possible is because in Web3, we have a universal identity, the wallet. And the wallet gives you signing privileges everywhere. This opens up a whole new mode of interaction for dApps and projects to reach you remotely and give you an opportunity to interact with their content right in the moment and right in the message. We are thrilled to announce that the Smart Message specification is officially live as of this week. We announced this 2 days ago at Breakpoint. It is in alpha, and it is live on our GitHub, open source at Dialect Labs /smart messaging. So please go check it out. We're going to be working on this document live and would love feedback. Over 50 projects across the Solana ecosystem have committed to building smart messages with us. Across these projects, we're talking about virtually every possible Web3 use case you could imagine. NFTs, DeFi, social, DAOs, and multi-sigs, you name it. We're also thrilled to announce the Smart Message Grant Program. This is $100,000 in total funding to the best new talent building in Web3. If you are a new developer and you've got cool ideas across any vertical at all, and you believe that messaging can help engage your users and delight them, we would love to hear from you. You can learn more at developers.dialect.to. But let's walk through the Smart Message design. This is a developer venue. Let's get into the development. The case study we want to look at today is the NFT mint. You saw this in our examples earlier. We're going to do a mix of this plus the vanilla token transfer, since that's kind of the canonical transaction on the blockchain. Smart messages extend Solana Pay. We have been working in close development with Solana Labs, building the Smart Message spec as something on top of Solana Pay. We believe that to build great technology, you have to stand on the shoulders of giants, and Solana Pay is one of our favorite pieces of tech in Web3. Smart messages are fully backward compatible, so you can implement simply the Solana Pay transaction request spec, but we're extending it to improve the user experience. So on that note, we're going to start with a Solana Pay brief overview in the context of messaging. Recall that Solana Pay transaction requests can execute arbitrary transactions. This is not just token transfers. Every example you saw before is possible with the transaction request spec. To quote one of our good friends, Jordan, Solana Pay is like Connect Wallet delivered over new kinds of channels. It's like stripping out the web app, stripping out the Connect Wallet button, all of the UI, and delivering the transaction and the signing process through things like NFCs, QR codes, and for us, messaging. At its core, the Solana Pay spec is a URL encoding of the word Solana, followed by any URL on the internet that points to a service that manages the process of building transactions for you. In this example, we're going to take a dummy site, nftexchange.dev. This is not the website. This is a URL powering their API, for example, if you were to hit the mint button on their site. As I mentioned, the URL in the Solana Pay encoding is a service out in the world. That's the transaction request service that we're going to call it here. And the client could be your phone. It could be a website, any of that. The transaction request spec starts with a get call that returns educational information. In this spec, it is a label and an icon. You can think of that as an image and a button, respectively, as you can see here. So we could say send one sol and some kind of educational image. In the mint scenario, that would be the button here, mint now, and the icon of the NFT collection that you want to mint. After reading that information, the client calls a post request, and this builds the transaction and returns it in a serialized format. The client then signs the transaction and submits it to the Solana blockchain and manages the process of checking for the finality and the confirmation of the transaction. Altogether, that's three things: a get for educational information, a post request to build the transaction, and a submission from the client side. Smart messages extend Solana Pay in at least 4 ways. We're starting with 4: enhanced status, state persistence, multi-action support, and multi-party support. We're going to cover the first 2 in more detail now. There are 5 enhanced statuses: ready, invalidated, executing, succeeded, and failed. Transaction request services in a smart message context do validation to check whether a transaction is ready or invalidated. Ready is equivalent to there being no status in the traditional Solana Pay specification. Invalidated is, for example, useful if the mint has sold out or the voting period is over or any other use case you could imagine here. Executed, completing, and failed are all managed client-side in this context. But the transaction request service has a responsibility to show the client what kinds of displays the user should see in any of those environments. So we extend the label and icon so that either one of them can be more than just a string. It can also be nested JSON in order to support the various states you see here, as well as, because this is a messaging environment, the sender and the receiver. So I'm going to point out one thing here. A sender would see that they've requested 20 SOL from someone, and the receiver would see the call to action to send 20 SOL. In this context, the transaction request service is returning all of this information because it knows nothing about the status of the transaction. The transaction is being submitted by the client. And then the client uses the statuses that it sees while interacting with Solana to then render the appropriate information for the end user. Messages are long-lived. State should be too. So we just talked about various statuses, but we didn't talk about how we store them. This is the next major extension to the Solana Pay spec with smart messaging, which is the existence of a state service. We introduced this new state service in between the client and the transaction request service to manage many of the processes we just talked through so that the user doesn't have to be present while various steps are being executed. The first part of the state service is adding a get and post pass-through request routes to manage the process of talking to various transaction request services out in the world. I want to clarify that there are many heterogeneous transaction request services in the world. Every project can make one. It is open and decentralized. But there can just be one state service. We intend to run one, but anyone can. As those calls are made through to various transaction request services, the state service manages storing the metadata retrieved in a database. This is important. This is important because caching reduces validation load. If transaction request services are busy validating whether the status of a smart message is ready or invalidated or otherwise, once you enter invalidated or succeeded, there's no reason to continue to do validation. So terminal states, caching is especially useful for those. And then lastly, the state service manages transaction execution. The reason this is important is because the user can ship off, tap a smart message, and then they can turn their phone off, they can delete the app, they can throw their phone in a river, they can do whatever they want. It's important that that information eventually succeed so that the message status is correct in the end. And the last point we'll make on persistence is how is persistence tracked? Smart messages are uncoupled from messages themselves. The Solana Pay spec and the smart message spec are URL encoding of information. You'll see here, the message sent to a user is minting is now live, and then a Solana Pay URL. What we do is we extend that to add a smart message ID. And then clients, when they see this ID, they interpret that as, it is my responsibility to now ship this to a state service, which will then manage the process. The last thing we'll talk about here, there's one more topic, is adding additional metadata. As you saw, the label and icon for Solana Pay is relatively simple. It's educational, but we are mostly familiar with link previews in the world. So the smart message spec also supports titles and descriptions to give users a more familiar experience interacting with these smart messages. And on the topic of link previews, users don't send each other API links in the world. We send each other links to websites. But everything we've talked about up until now are URLs. They're APIs that build transactions headlessly. The smart message specification will also include the ability to add a meta property into the URLs on your sites. That is a dialect smart message compatible property. By doing this, and by adding, as you see here, a Solana Pay URL into your site's HTML in the header, you can add a button to your link previews. We think this is a small but really profound enhancement to how we share information on the internet. Link previews transformed the way that we share and act socially about the internet. URLs are the backbone of that experience. And now we can not only read them, but we can also interact with them. All right, zooming out, what have we covered so far? All of the things that we've talked about with smart messaging. What we're saying is you can basically take any button, any wallet-authenticated button on the internet, and you can share it with people. This kind of interaction is a small but profound improvement to how we interact with each other because engagement is precious. Smart messages give your users the fastest way to act on your calls to action. Coming in the future spec are some of the things that we itemized out earlier on in the talk. Multi-action smart messages. You saw one of our examples was for realms. Obviously, you wouldn't want to just vote yes. You might want to vote no. I'm sure they want you to vote yes. Multi-party smart messages. Everything that we talked about so far is one-on-one. We are introducing support for group chat, and there are all kinds of interesting smart message use cases for sharing them inside of multi-party environments. And of course, sign message smart messages. If any of you have been paying close attention, there is an enhancement to the Solana Pay spec to not only support transaction requests, but to also support signed message requests. And this is powerful because it allows you to now interact with all kinds of resources that are off the blockchain. Everything we just talked about, imagine doing that talking to off-chain services instead of necessarily submitting transactions. So as we wrap up, I want to talk about one more thing here. The smart message spec, messaging in Web3 and these kinds of new technologies need a consumer-grade messaging application. At Breakpoint 2 days ago, 36 hours ago, we were delighted to announce the Dialect app. We are open source developer tooling, but we cannot wait for the future, and we are thrilled to launch this with all of you. So the Dialect app is our consumer messaging product that we have launched with full support for smart messaging. Dialect is available today on the iOS App Store. You can download it now. This information has not been shared with anyone outside of Breakpoint. We have been sharing this with our friends, and we love the Solana community, and we want you all to see it first. It is iOS only. Android will be coming soon. This is a pre-release in-app waitlist, but we have a really fun experience we think you're going to enjoy here. When you get into the app, if you invite your friends, you will earn a limited run NFT sticker pack. These are tickets that will redeem NFT sticker packs. We are incredibly excited about this. I'm just going to take a minute to describe it. These are NFTs like anything else, but they are animated, they're emotional, they're sticker packs like the ones that you love to use in other messaging and chat products. But you can buy and sell them, you can trade them, and you can collect them. Early users of the Dialect app will have privileged access to this. We have OG packs, Genesis packs, we've got special edition packs, and we've got some other exciting stuff in there too. As I said, Android coming soon. But most importantly, we are already deployed on Saga. We have Saga phones that we're using here, and we will be launching on Saga on day 1. So if you're interested in seeing what messaging on Saga looks like, come find us. I'm going to point at Kevin in the front row here. He's our mobile developer who's got access to our Saga. This is not a website. Dialect is a mobile app built specifically for Saga. And working with the Saga team, we are the first mobile native application on Saga beyond Phantom and Solflare and the other wallets. It has been an amazing experience for us to work with the Saga and Solana Mobile teams. Everything that you saw here, a huge part of the last few months of our motivation was the launch of the Saga Phone and Solana Mobile. So we're thrilled to be able to present today. Messaging is a mobile experience first and foremost, and we cannot wait to see the proliferation of mobile messaging and mobile apps in general on Saga. Thank you. Happy to take questions. We have a couple minutes.
Hey, if I understand correctly, what happened? The state component of this whole system is pretty much mandatory, right? If you add this ID into the Solana URL, then it automatically expects that there will be this state component that will be using that. What are the scenarios when you, for example, suddenly do not have access to this state service at all? You just have the URL, and for some reason, for example, I don't know, the internet just dies for some reason. What happens then?
So in general, when you're using the internet and the internet dies, things typically go wrong. But this is an excellent question. I mentioned this at the beginning of the talk and could reemphasize it. Smart messages have been designed to be completely compatible with the stateless Solana Pay specification. All of what you saw around minting completed, success, all of that is an improvement to the user experience, but is not necessarily mandatory. The state service can be removed entirely, and state can be persisted locally to phones, anything at all. You can treat any database in the world as a source of truth, or not use anyone at all, but you'll just have a better messaging experience if you manage state over time. If you were, for example, to store that state locally on your phone, one of the things we're really excited about in the Dialect app and with this stateful specification is, let's say I send you a transfer request and you act on it right away, I can actually see in the message that you're acting on it. So I, as the sender, can see it completing, processing and completing. And that wouldn't be possible, for example, if you were only storing state locally on your phone. That said, we generally think of, let's say, security, decentralization, privacy, and performance, experience, and whatnot as general trade-offs. And so we lean toward create delightful experiences, but we wanted our specification to be as flexible as possible. So yes, you can use a completely stateless system, and that will work just as well. Any other questions? I think we're down to just a few more seconds.
Maybe in a small follow-up. So you're saying that also any database, do you mean the rational database or NoSQL database? What kind of databases are compatible?
I think that's probably entirely up to the developer and whatever problems that they're solving for. In general, messaging is very high volume and needs high performance, and so I would lean toward databases like that. Should also clarify, Dialect intends fully to run the state service for the Dialect app, and any other inboxes that are powered by Dialect in the world should probably use that as well. Projects are required to build the transaction request services. You can think of them as like the link preview builders that power all the websites that you love throughout the internet. But we are developers, we're geeks, and we wanted to share a little bit about it. Most folks will not have to think about it. All right, I think that's it. I think we're at time. Thank you.
Good job. Well, that was fantastic. So again, I'm Josh Freed. I work at Solana Labs on payments and the Solana Pay protocol. And it's really fantastic to see the protocol that we released just in February of this year used to power things that are not just payments related. I mean, obviously, you can use Solana Pay, as you know, if you've been listening or watching, to buy amazing physical products like these dark mode ASICS UI collection Solana sneakers, plug. But you can also build amazing notifications and messaging projects like Dialect is doing, which is just superb. I mean, we couldn't have dreamed of a better, more extensible, composable payments protocol when we launched earlier this year. So we are going to bring up next, in just a few short minutes, Abai from the Helium Foundation. He's a CEO, and Noah Prince, and they're going to talk to us about Helium coming to Solana, which is super, super exciting. I think we're almost ready to go. If you have any questions about this beautiful sneaker that you see up here that I'm demonstrating today, I will be found over here on the left. This is a size 10. You can literally come try on my shoe if you're interested. There's only 1.5 days left to get these limited edition ASIC sneakers. So come find me. I'll literally take my shoes off and put them on your feet if you're willing to give it a shot. We're good to go. All right. So please welcome Abe, CEO of the Helium Foundation.
Morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? So really glad to follow Chris. We talked to the Dialect guys back in Austin a few months ago, and we're excited to actually integrate with Dialect as well in some of the Helium ecosystem. So we want to tell all of you a little bit about us coming to Solana. Our network. Our community decided to vote and move the network to Solana earlier this year, and we want to spend a little bit of time today talking through how we're doing that, our progress, and actually do a live demo of our contracts if the Wi-Fi doesn't rug us. We'll see. But we have a backup video just in case. So before we jump into the fun stuff, I want to tell you all, or give you all a little bit of background about what we do with the Helium network. So this is the Helium network. It's the people's network. It's the world's first decentralized wireless network. It's powered by the H&T incentive model, and it's owned by the people. What does that mean? That means you as an individual can have a radio in your house, on your roof, in a coffee shop, looking out onto an open plaza, and you're able to provide access to sensors and to phones to anyone permissionlessly. The core mission of Helium has always been to build ubiquitous and affordable connectivity to the internet for all things and people. And over the last 3 years, the Helium network has grown to over 970,000 hotspots worldwide in more than 75,000 cities. And here's what hotspot coverage looks like here in Lisbon. You can see that it's actually pretty well covered where we are. All the sensors in the city of Lisbon is able to reach the internet because of this coverage that the community has built. There's several people here at Breakpoint, and they've been building this coverage. If you talk to the Hotspotty folks, the ShareSpot folks, Heliotics, several companies that have really done amazing things here. So what did the Helium network start with? We started with an IoT network. So companies can use the network to build solutions for things like air quality monitoring, asset tracking, smart agriculture, just to name a few. And by providing coverage for users to connect their IoT devices, hotspot owners earn crypto. They earn the IoT token. But the IoT network is not the only people-powered network. Earlier this year, we launched the mobile network. And the mobile network launched first in the United States, and it's now the world's first decentralized phone network. And since August, there have been over 6,700 Helium hotspots deployed in 1,400 cities all over the United States. And again, in exchange for providing this coverage, hotspots earn mobile tokens. But this is not why we're here today. Why we're here today is to tell people about our progress in moving Helium to Solana. So when Helium first started back in 2019, we built our own blockchain from the ground up. There weren't a lot of options out there. We looked at building on Ethereum. We thought about putting a Bitcoin miner in every single one of our hotspots. It just really didn't meet our needs. But fast forward to present day, there are tons of options that are out there, and block space is starting to become commoditized, and execution engines are also somewhat commoditized. But we started to see issues in our own chain around scalability and reliability, and ultimately, our network exists to provide access to devices and people. We're not here to build blockchains. And so it became clear that we needed a better solution here, and we needed a new blockchain. And so when something isn't working or there's an improvement, we have a process in the Helium network called a HIP. We stole that from Bitcoin, BIPs, EIPs, and Ethereum. Lots of protocols have these. And anyone who feels strongly about what the Helium network should be can write a HIP, write some code, and propose it to the community. And the community votes on whether or not these proposals should pass. And the 2 stars of the show that happened this year were HIP 51 and HIP 70. And I'll tell you all a little bit about these. So HIP 51 was where we established the Helium DAO. And this really was the reason why we started this process. It gave us the ability to expand Helium into multiple wireless networks alongside the IoT network. And that's how we launched the mobile network earlier this year. And HIP 51 also carved out this idea and sort of proposed this idea that tokens, hotspots, emissions rules, governance, all of that can live at a brand new proposed layer 1. And at that time, we started the evaluation of whether or not we should continue to expand the work that we've done on the Helium layer 1, or we should consider some others. And HIP 70 was a scaling HIP that we wrote this summer. And the community passed this HIP in September. And HIP 70 proposes a new architecture for the core parts of our blockchain. Proof of coverage, the system that incentivizes new coverage that's being created, and ongoing coverage before there's actual data transferring, and data transfer itself. And it also proposed, and why we're all here, a new layer 1, Solana. Typically, what we like to do with HIPs in the Helium network is we like to be very opinionated about what we believe the world should be, and rather than sort of like saying, oh yeah, and we'll evaluate 17 different things. And so why did the core devs choose Solana? So we chose Solana to massively scale the network and allow the core team to focus on the things that are the most important, supporting the growth of networks and growing the existing networks that are already out there. Again, 970,000 hotspots. When we started, all of those hotspots ran a full copy of the chain. And the 3 key reasons why we chose Solana is, we didn't want to sort of manage our own L1. Solana has this enormous ecosystem and a ton of devs. Working with teams like Dialect is an option for us. Being able to use core primitives like realms immediately was really important to us. And this massive ecosystem we thought would accelerate adoption of the Helium network. And finally, HNT and the other tokens become natively compatible with any other tokens and other protocols on the Solana ecosystem. And so it drives more utility to HNT, the mobile, and the IoT token holders. And Solana enables a lot of possibilities for us. And an important one was actually more rewards for hotspot owners. Because we were running our own L1 and we had our own staked validators, about 2 million of HNT a year was going to validators. And so that now can go back to hotspot owners. And there's also more opportunity for mining. Proof of coverage, which is the primary way that folks mine today as the network grows, is able to become more consistent. And our blockchain no longer has to scale super linearly to match hotspot growth. And we wanted to provide a better network. Data transfer is the key of this network, and we want to make sure that data transfer is as reliable as possible. And finally, we wanted to allow folks who had HNT, IoT, and mobile tokens the opportunity to participate in all parts of the Solana ecosystem. Participate in DeFi networks, participate in NFT marketplaces, and when we launch on Solana mainnet, we're going to be minting almost 1 million NFTs. And then composability with other applications of the Solana ecosystem, as I was mentioned. So where does the Helium Foundation come into the picture? We're focused on growing the protocol, the usage of the Helium network, and enabling open and transparent governance of the largest wireless network in the world. So the obvious question is, when migration, right? So one of the things I'm really proud to announce this week was the acquisition of the Strata protocol and Noah Prince and his team joining our team. And this team is going to help us migrate to the Solana ecosystem. And we plan right now to get to mainnet by Q1. So I'd like to invite Noah on stage. He's the one that yells at me if I try to write code, basically. So we're going to do a little demo, and Noah's going to set it up, and you guys will get to see some cool stuff. It's interactive.
We should go back to the slides.
Oh, yeah. Can we get one slide back before we switch over to the video? Or, yeah, to the...
Gotta explain what's happening. There we go.
There we go. If you hit that QR code, what you're going to see is 4 fake hotspots that are running on Solana mainnet. So here we go.
Jim, how's it going, guys? So, oh, no. No, we need the slide back. I've been running. So, yeah, I've been put in charge of the Solana migration for Helium, at least the protocol side of it. So yeah, we're just going to take an entire network, an entire L1, and we're going to push it over there. Can't be that bad. So I've been told by multiple people that you should just record your demos. You shouldn't do them live, and you certainly shouldn't do them on mainnet. We're going to avoid all of that advice. We're going to do it all live on mainnet, because if it's not on mainnet, it doesn't exist. So we got 4 hotspots. So I want you guys all to go here, scan this QR code. You'll be able to click on these hotspots and basically simulate network usage. So pick your favorite one. I know it's like a horse race. Pummel our servers. Don't break them. So we've got the Helium DAO. We've got the mobile sub-DAO. Sorry, IoT is not in here. We just got mobile. So what will happen is, as you click on these hotspots, they will be accumulating mobile tokens as rewards. And those mobile tokens will come from the mobile sub-DAO. Now, those mobile tokens are backed by HNT that's coming from the Helium DAO. So what will happen is Helium has epics. They run for, I think on Solana, we're going to run them for a day. I figured you guys didn't want to wait a day to see what happens, so I have the control to manually end the epic. So you'll get to see my terminal. But basically, we're going to take 100 mobile, reward it to these hotspots. We're going to take 50 HNT and reward it to the sub-DAOs. Now, spoiler alert, mobile's going to do a lot better than IoT, and it's going to get all 50. Sorry, IoT. And then, wow, we're going to use Backpack. So this is where we can actually go and claim our mobile rewards. And then we'll show you some of the security stuff that we're doing as well. OK, now we can finally do the screen switch. How do we switch?
It'll switch over.
There we go. Yeah, it probably takes a bit. So if you didn't scan the QR code, it looks like this. You just get to click the hotspots to simulate some usage. So here we have a Grafana dashboard. I'd like to take credit for Grafana, but no, I just put this together. So we're putting a big focus on security here. So we don't want to be the last to know if something goes wrong with the network. So this is actually running against mainnet, and it's monitoring all the balances of the DAO and the sub-DAO. So we've got our HNT balance in the mobile treasury, which is 0, because we haven't ended the epic yet. We've got rewards that are set to be sent out to all of the hotspots. And then we've got all the supplies of the tokens. Another thing you'll see down here is another security precaution that we have. So circuit breakers are really, if you're from TradFi, you're probably used to seeing them. It's this idea, sort of like electricity in your house, right? If there's a huge burst, you want to shut things down because probably it shouldn't have happened. In the stock market, if a single stock tanks by 20% in a day, usually they'll shut it down for like 10 minutes just so everybody can, see if it was legit, right? See if something bad happened. Reality is, we're writing these contracts, we are, having them audited, but you have to have backups. And in this case, right, like the most precious thing in the case of an exploit is time. So these breakers don't work quite like the stock market breakers. They're actually more of rate limiters. But the idea is the same. If more than, say, 20% of the mobile tokens leave the treasury in a configurable window, like 24 hours, we want to slow it down. So you'll actually see these live updating as we go through the demo. But I'm going to go ahead and end the epic. And this is where we'll see if mainnet has forsaken me. Mainnet has not forsaken me, guys. We did it. So we've got our backpack. Going to rug my password here. Cool. So here are our hotspots. And no pending rewards yet. That's, well, this is what you get for doing demos live on mainnet. Let's take a look down here. We can actually see that 100 HNZ has gone into the mobile treasury. 50 mobile is ready to be rewarded. And you can actually see down here that we've got a circuit breaker on the mint authority of mobile. So if this were to like run 5 more times, it would actually shut off to keep an exploit from happening. So we'll go here. Well, nothing ever works. All right. I will pull up our recording, which we have in QuickTime here. So generally, this is what it would have looked like. Sorry, guys. So you can actually go through, and you can claim your rewards. So generally, the way that we're doing this, Helium has about 1 million hotspots. You get into serious scaling issues if you're trying to send out rewards all the time for every single hotspot. It's just going to like spam the chain with transactions. So what we've created here is kind of a lazy distribution oracle where your hotspots, which are represented by NFTs, accumulate rewards, and they're like a piñata. So you can come to your XNFT, and you can hit the piñata, claim the rewards. You can also claim all the rewards at once. And a design decision that we made here is the oracles don't actually depend on the blockchain at all. So they just have to keep track of the lifetime rewards. So right now, the lifetime rewards for this hotspot would be 20 mobile. Once you claim it, the lifetime rewards are still 20 mobile, but you've also claimed 20 mobile, so on-chain it knows that you're not eligible to claim anymore. Now, if you were to claim, or if you were to accumulate some more in the next epoch, that number would tick up because it's comparing the lifetime rewards to your current rewards. So after you mint these things, you can kind of see the dashboard here changing. Here, I'll just go big screen with this. I'm disappointed that the mainnet demo didn't work, but I always have to have a backup. And this was on mainnet too, just a few hours ago. So now the other thing that we can do after we've claimed all of our rewards is redeem mobile for HNT. So this is kind of the core prospect of DAOs and sub-DAOs in Helium. The idea is that all of the tokens in a sub-DAO are still backed by the main DAO's token. So if you've looked at Strata, it's kind of similar to the bonding curves that we have in Strata, but it's only one way. So you cannot buy mobile tokens. You can only redeem mobile tokens for HNT. So here we have a swap. You can take some amount, burn the mobile, so that'll reduce the mobile supply, and that'll give you some of the HNT treasury. And you can see on our monitoring that the mobile treasury balance will go down, and also as we were claiming, the mobile rewards were going down. Now over here, you'll actually see the circuit breakers taking effect. So it's set to 20% within a day. And since we've burned some in a second here, this is going to jump up. Now, we can also go and we can turn our HNT into data credits. And data credits are what you use to actually pay for using the network. So generally, the virtuous cycle with Helium is that you burn HNT so that you can acquire data credits to use the network, and then people are acquiring these sub-DAO tokens for providing the network. It's sort of closed loop. Now, in a second here, in the demo, Now we're going to break the breaker. So if I hit the maximum amount here, it's going to trip the breaker, and the transaction won't succeed. And that's important, because generally we don't want something to happen where the entire treasury gets drained in one transaction. Right? That's probably not legitimate use of the system. And if it were a legitimate use of the system, the rate limiter will let it eventually get drained. We just need time. So with that, that's pretty much the full flow. We've got the full network kind of running on Solana. The parts that are left now of the Solana migration are the actual integration with Helium's cloud, right? So there are a system of oracles that are trying to count all the packets that are used by all the hotspots and provide proof of coverage rewards and kind of figure out that lifetime rewards. And then we've also got some interesting problems coming with taking all of the hotspots and all of the rewards and putting them onto the Solana blockchain. For example, like 1 million hotspots, we represent hotspots as NFTs. That's 1 million NFTs at about 40 cents a pop. It's very, very expensive in rent to mint those, so we're actually probably going to work with NFT compression to try and solve some of these problems. You also have to try to send a bunch of transactions to distribute these NFTs and mint them. So there's a lot of technical problems ahead of us, but the core functionality of how the DAOs, the sub-DAOs, how they work, the token flow, we've actually got that all working. It's in a contract. It's on mainnet. I'm hesitant to say live on mainnet because it's not live. We just like to make sure that things work on mainnet because, as you've seen here, transactions fail. You get bad data. Things like that always happen, so we always try to test on mainnet.
Can we switch over to the presentation?
Yeah. You want the?
Oh, sure. So, can we switch back to the slide?
Yeah, I'm going to see if it actually picked up
There
eventually.
you go.
Nah, it didn't.
This one, this one. All right. So we published all of these programs in the Helium program library. It's available right now. That QR code will get you access to all of that. It's written in Anchor and TypeScript and things like that, so you can download it, build it, generate your IDLs. You can actually start using it. We actually open source the distributor, which is already open source. We changed a little bit, and the circuit breakers already. So if you want to use that within your programs, please try it out yourself, or come talk to us. We're around. Happy to take. I think we have like 7 minutes for questions if anyone has any. But really appreciate the time.
Hey. One question though. So you're right now having two different IoT concepts, the GSM network for mobile and the IoT for actual device communication without any kind of carrier stuff in between, right? Do you plan, for example, to have some kind of unified compound device hardware offering that actually is providing both? Something like VoLTE or anything around that?
Yeah, so great question. So the original IoT network that we built was for a protocol called LoRaWAN. And the sort of new mobile network is actually a CBRS-based network. It's a Citizens Band Radio Service, which is a shared spectrum that's available to folks in the United States. But the mobile network shouldn't just be for that kind of network. It should actually be for potentially IoT devices, but also really phones. Yesterday and the day before, the Nova Labs team launched Helium Mobile and sort of announced that all Saga phones in the United States would come with free service for the first 30 days. And so that's really what that mobile network is for. It's for our phones. It's for our sort of general use case. And I think the way that I think about the mobile network is it is not just for the US. It's not just CBRS. Ultimately, it's what else is on our phone. Most of our phones these days have 60, 80 different radios that it can, or say different bands that it can connect to. It can also connect to Wi-Fi, and I really believe that that is the future of the mobile network globally, and it's how it'll expand over time. And yeah, we're working on Wi-Fi as well. And there's a couple of different teams in the Helium ecosystem that are working in that direction today. Hopefully that answered your question. Yeah, so looks like we're good. So please find us if you have any questions. Just download the code and use it. Like, I don't know. Noah and I are kind of the opinion is if you can't get something working in like 10, 20 minutes, you go try to figure it out and play with the code and figure it out. That's way easier than showing demos. Cheers. Thanks everyone.
Well done. Thanks. Oh man, that was fantastic. Quick change of the stage here. Welcome again to Pateo de Galais. This is your lab, your workshop, your technical deep dive location. Just wanted to put in one more plug for tonight's sort of closing ceremonies and closing celebration. 6:50-ish at the Convento do Beato. Raj and Toli will be doing a sort of a wrap-up session. What have we learned? And then that will lead into a closing ceremony. And then ultimately at 9 p.m., the essentially massive dance party with everybody from the Solana community, which last year was incredible. I highly recommend if you're in town, stick around for the party tonight. Come dance your pants off. It's going to be a really good time. All right, so sticking with the Helium theme, we're going to talk a little bit about location tracking. Joey from the Helium Foundation is going to come up and be joined by Carrie and Jose. And they're going to talk a little bit about use cases with Helium and what we can expect from this very, very powerful network. So let's bring up Joey. Let's give him a warm, warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joey. I'm the technical director at the Helium Foundation, and Abai is actually my boss, so you get to see the whole team today. This morning, Abai gave like a really great overview of the Helium network and what we're up to. Yesterday, Amir gave an awesome network of like the Helium network more broadly. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what it means to build on Helium's IoT network. Now, historically, I've done some sort of wild demos talking about everything from IKEA hacking an air quality sensor to be on the Helium network to some more wild things like internet-connected chicken coops and supply chain tracking for small coffee shops. Today, we're going to talk with Jose. Jose is one of our partners at Rack Wireless that provides all of the hotspots that enable this Helium connectivity throughout the world. And then also bringing on Carrie from Vaxis, who is using Helium in their Solana application to bring all this real-world connectivity into Web3. So I'm going to hand it over to Jose. Thank you.
Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Jose Marcelino. I'm from Rack Wireless. We are part of the Helium ecosystem. We make mostly miners, but we also make a lot of the IoT solutions that run on the Helium network. And and today I'm here to talk about our partner, TrackPack. This is a new company in the Helium ecosystem. They just founded this year. Very, very new. But already had over 1 million geolocation tags, so they work on trackers. They are based in the UK. They already have found 5 big customers, including a very large bike manufacturer. They're working with city councils in the UK. They are developing hardware as well for Helium. And kind of already have created all this iOS and Android and web apps as well for this solution in a very, very short time. The idea of TrackPack is really to make tracking simple. So right now, trackers are kind of difficult to connect with the network initially. and they want to make this step really simple. So just scan a QR code and get the tracker on the network. Just like kind of like Helium made the LoRaWAN miners so simple as well to add to the network. And I had the pleasure to work with them on a very cool project. You might have seen this. This is the Breakpoint Venue Transport Finder. So there's an app on the iOS App Store, and there's also a website. If you follow that link, you'll find it. And you can see where all the buses for the transportation are around all the venues. So you can find, oh, I'm just about to get one. This was a very cool project, done in a very, very short time, all thanks to the Helium network. For this project, we used two types of trackers, the Digital Monitor OST 3 and the Semtech reference trackers. These are readily available. You just buy them off the shelf. They cost about $50 each. But there's also a lot of other trackers you can use, like there's even cow trackers for specific applications. You can also, and thanks to the power of Helium, which is the openness and the permissionless nature of it, you can also create your own sensors. You don't need to ask anyone kind of permission to create it. You don't need any special licenses. You just connect them. It is all based in a standard LoRaWAN protocol, which is an open specification. There's a ton of tools and software environments to work on your own solution, so you can easily make a tracker as well. And there's a link there if you want to start kind of learning how to use LoRaWAN and make use of all these hotspots that are, like Abhay mentioned, all around Lisbon and many, many other cities around the world. And the amazing power of this is, so as I said, this was created very quickly. It is also very, very cheap. So we have 26 trackers. This was just a small sample. There are actually 52 buses all around the venues, but we tracked a good sample of them. And it only cost us 1,800 data credits on the Helium network. So this is the measurement of bytes that you have. And how much it costs. And each data credit on the network costs 0.001, so very, very tiny amount. And in total, for the 3 days tracking, it costs us 1.8 cents for each tracker. And this means that if you wanted to track the whole event across all 3 days, it will just cost you $1. So this is really the power of the network. And most importantly, once this event is over, so the trackers won't be pinging data anymore, and you won't pay anymore, so there's no running subscription fees. And just to compare, I was looking at some other trackers, like on the cellular network, and you end up paying like $10 a month in some cases for many of these trackers. So this is a really different business model. And now I'm going to pass over to Carrie from Baxis, also going to show you a very cool solution. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Baxis. And basically, Baxis is building infrastructure for tangible assets, and we're starting with whiskey and wine. So what does that mean? So we have basically created a pipeline for collectors to authenticate, store, and insure their wine bottles and their casks. And then we mint an NFT that represents proof of ownership and proof of authentication, which users can not only trade, but we can also use as collateral for loans. And there are obviously many more financial use cases here. So our goal was really to bring modern markets to these non-standardized, non-traditional asset classes. And it just turns out that Helium is the perfect use case for that, as we're able to use all of these different LoRaWAN sensors within the vault to create this trustless vaulting infrastructure. So right now, we're starting off with proof of presence as well as temperature and sensor data. But really the main and the best part of this is that if you have this data that's able to historically track all these different assets, then you can validate existence, security, and external factors, which means that you can really have a real-time audit of all of these bottles. So in order to better explain this, I'll give you a little bit of an explanation of what we're doing. So this is how we do this with casks. So currently, casks on our platform are outfitted with temperature and humidity sensors. And right now, this process of being able to track temperature for casks actually doesn't really exist yet because it's so expensive and difficult to get Wi-Fi into these very rural areas, specifically Kentucky. And so helium miners give us the ability to hook up to Wi-Fi and then have a network that extends 100 miles. So that is solving one of the major problems. And then the second one is the fact that it's super expensive. Right now, to get any Wi-Fi into these rural areas, you have to actually lay cable down and do that whole situation, and it's absolutely crazy. And so we've been able to basically create this system that allows for these temperature sensors in the rick houses to be able to ping to these distillers to give them an idea and a concept of sort of what's going on in the rick houses. And so this is just temperature and humidity data. What we're working on right now is actually a proof of presence protocol. So if you think of proof of reserve for stablecoins, we're basically doing that, but for NFTs, to validate the existence of these bottles. And our R&D team is now working on a lot of different types of hardware solutions. So for example, we're coming up with a dielectric constant sensor that will be able to determine the alcohol to water percentage within the actual casks. So just to give you a bit of an idea of how easy we were able to integrate this. So I actually met Joey at Empire DAO in New York 2 months ago, and I began to learn. I knew about helium, but that's when I really began to get into the LoRaWAN network. And really, you can start as simple as buying a LoRaWAN sensor online for 10. They were between 10 and 20 bucks, and then go to the helium console online. And then Joey actually, if you scan this QR code, you can see the real-time temperature data. This is what Joey showed me, and I kind of flipped out. It was just so amazing and exactly what we needed. And then from there, it's literally also, this is just exported to a Google Sheet right now, just to give you an idea of how simple this is. And then from there, we've bought more miners, we've bought more sensors. We're on like a better console now that handles more devices. And then we also obviously have created services and like big queries that we're able to store and transform all this data. So really with Helium, it's been able to have this, we've been able to create this provenance for all these different assets that are within our vault. And then with that provenance and that real-time auditing of these assets, then you become the infrastructure for any fractionalization platform, asset-backed marketplace, any asset-backed bank, anything like that. And it's really because of Helium that we've been able to create that infrastructure. So I'm going to bring Joey back up to talk about how you guys can learn about this as well. Thank you. There you go.
So this should give you a little bit of an idea of the sort of opportunities that are available within the Helium ecosystem. This is internet connectivity for everyday devices. So whether it's asset tracking or temperature tracking or a machine learning informed camera that's telling you when it sees something out in the world, all of this stuff can come back into your applications and provide a ton of value at a super low cost to you. I want to talk a little bit about this kind of wild thing that we're doing. This is tomorrow. We are hosting, as a just awesome example of how Helium works, we're hosting a hackathon on a train in Portugal. The country of Portugal has wildly awesome coverage. There's been a bunch of deployers here that have built just that total industrial grade network. And so if you're interested in this, I highly recommend checking it out. There's a couple more seats available. It's a train, so we can only fit so many people. But we're going to have, there's a bunch of sponsors that have made this possible. We're going to have tons of hardware. We have all of the best expertise on board. So anything from the architecture that makes this system work down to the hardware and how you would build or deploy your own solutions on the Helium network. This will be the place to learn it, so I highly recommend it. Given we have just a little bit of time left, I would love to open this up to questions either for me, for the Helium network, or for our co-presenters. If it was a totally solid presentation, then we're good to go. Thanks so much for taking the time to learn about this. If anyone has questions, feel free to come and find us. We'll be around. We'd love to talk about all the sensors and ways this connect. Thank you.
All right. That wraps up our 3-session morning sprint. So you guys actually get about 25 minutes of break time. So breakfast is being served behind me. Restrooms are this way. If you want to drop off your disco headset, it's back where you walked in. Thank you so much for joining us bright and early. We'll be back at 11:45 for the rest of the panels. Take care, everybody. I'm Josh. I've been your MC for the morning. Safe travels back home to wherever you're heading. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Great to be back here on day 3 of our programming here at the laboratory. It's been amazing to MC this stage. This is my first Breakpoint. My name is David, by the way. I work on the grants program at the Solana Foundation. But it's been incredible to be able to hear from really some of the masters, some of the people who are the most talented, intelligent developers on Solana who are helping everyone here sort of learn how to be a great Solana developer. And this presentation is actually going to be sort of right in that vein. I think it's really aimed at people who maybe are newer to Solana, who are coming from another chain, looking to figure out what do I need to do first, how can I become a great developer on Solana. So I'm really, really excited to welcome our next presenter from Phantom, and he's going to discuss how to build your first Anchor program. So please welcome him.
Awesome intro, man. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much for coming, and hope I don't interrupt your lunchtime break. All right. So this is going to be a presentation around building your first Anchor program. We're going to take an example of building a vesting schedule. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a software engineer at Phantom. I've been there for close to a year. And in my pastimes, I love riding bikes in California, taking out my dog, and writing Anchor programs. And guess what we're going to talk about today? Writing Anchor programs. So I just want to set the stage, like why I wanted to build this presentation. So many of you think this is a bear market. To me, this is the best builder's market ever. Have you seen all the hacker houses out there? Have you looked around? How many people have been here in the last 3 days? It's been incredible. To me, there's more and more people coming into the space. And so my goal is to get them excited about building applications on the Solana blockchain, which has an insane amount of possibilities. People are coming in from other chains, like EVM chains. People coming in with no chain experience at all. And some people are not even developers, and they actually want to build on top of the Solana chain. So this is a presentation for them. On top of that, I want to give people some practical exposure to Solana programming. There's this word called Rust that really intimidates people. And I would say that you don't really need to know that much of Rust to actually program Anchor. On top of that, working at Phantom, we really want to empower the entire ecosystem. So this is really to grow the pie of developers. Cool. So who's ever heard of Anchor here? Raise your hand. All right. Who's ever developed on Anchor? Awesome. Great. So this is taken from the website. Anchor is a framework for quickly building secure Solana programs. Anchor is a framework that increases an insane amount of productivity out of teams that use it. Anchor is safe by default. It provides a lot of safety guarantees for you. It also allows you to extend those safety constraints through the code. Anchor is very opinionated. It's kind of similar to Ruby on Rails. This is my take, by the way, not the standard take, but it's similar to Ruby on Rails in terms of with one command, it'll scaffold files for you, and it'll create a consistent set of structure that you can use. So developers coming into projects don't need to second guess. They can use the folder structure that is created for them. Finally, Anchor is really fun. So I would say it's incredible to see how much you can build with just a few lines of code. So let's go through a quick game plan. We're going to walk through what token vesting is. Then we're going to take that concept, we're going to break it down into a few core ideas, and then we're going to implement it. Sounds good? So one quick caveat is this tutorial is for people that already have some experience on Solana. This is not an advanced tutorial by any means. This is going to be a simple tutorial for Anchor. However, because I don't have that much time, I will be able to only partially cover some of these topics here. Also, I am far from an Anchor expert. If you want an Anchor expert, just wait 25 minutes for the next speaker. For now, you're going to have to stick with me, and I love teaching, but I am not an Anchor expert, so don't use my code in production. OK, let's go. OK, so what is vesting? So in traditional finance, as well as technology, employers like giving shares to employees as a form of compensation over a period of time. They use what is called a vesting schedule to provide this total amount of shares over some number of years. For example, here, an employee is receiving 4,000 shares over 4 years. If they quit after their second year, they get 2,000 shares. If they quit before their first year, they get nothing. This is called a cliff. And it's to incentivize employees to stay for at least a year. So let's take that and let's put our programmer hats on, and let's think of what could be like a data model for this, right? Here is a standard data model. I've just kind of like coding in the parameters of what a vesting schedule looks like, right? So cliff duration, start date, the grant amount. So starting from this, let's start getting into some Solana Anchor programming. And for the purpose of this demo, let's just assume that there can only be one grant between one employee and one employer. I'm going to start introducing this concept of a PDA, program-derived account. Essentially, it allows a Solana program to take as input a set of seeds and generate an account that it can operate on deterministically through hashing functions. These accounts generated from PDAs do not have a private key associated with them. They can only be operated through the program that is using these PDAs. On top of that, they're really great to consistently compute various accounts. Our token vesting program has an escrow account. It's trustless. So our employer needs to transfer the full amount of grant into this escrow token account, which is also a PDA. And this system account here, this authority, is the only one who can authorize transfers. So look at this. With just 2 accounts here, we've derived other free accounts. That's really special. So before we dive into some code, let's take a look at our free scenarios that we're going to implement today. The first one is when our employer, which is Alice, initializes the grant, creates the grant for Bob. Alice calls initialize instruction on our vesting program and passes in the state here, passes in these parameters, which are the grant constraints. Transfers all the tokens to this escrow account. 2 years later, Bob calls withdraw on his grant. Because he's been there for 2 years, he can withdraw half of his grant, and it gets sent back to the employee. Again, this is all trustless, so this escrow account can only be operated from within our program. Sadly, Bob quits, and Alice calls the revoke function on the grant. 2 transfers happen. The first one to Bob, where he can withdraw his vested tokens. The second one is to Alice, where she gets the remaining unvested tokens, so she can use that for other grants. These are the free instructions that we're going to implement today. A quick caveat is, because we don't have that much time, the math for vesting is not that complicated. And it's a distraction for our main goal, which is to do Anchor stuff. So for now, I've abstracted this in my code. However, you can always use my repository to actually read the code for the vesting math. All right, so let's switch, and let's take a look at some code. All right, awesome. So quick show of hands, is the font good? Up or OK? Perfect. All right, let's go. So I created this Anchor application using Anchor init project name. Again, it scaffolds all the files for me. Pretty special. I made 2 small changes to the Anchor application that I recommend people to do. The first one is I enabled the seeds equals true feature. We're going to take a look at how Anchor is not just a framework to build your programs. It's also a set of conventions that other libraries or programs can use. And by using this, seeds equals true, we're going to see how our programs can actually be built much easier. The second thing I did, and this is because of Breakpoint, I found out about this really cool linter. So yeah, everyone should use a linter, especially for Solana programs. So this is from Trail of Bits, I think. Please use a linter if you're going to build Solana programs. And of course, get an audit if things go to production. I won't be running these for the purpose of time, but you can find instructions on my repository on how to run it. OK, cool. So let's start by looking at an entry point of our application here. So this is where our token vesting program is defined. So this module here, you can see this program directive here. This is what allows us to understand that the program is actually our main set of instructions. There's 3 instructions here: initialize, revoke, and withdraw. Each instruction in Solana has 2 pieces of information. It has a set of accounts that are passed in, and it has a set of data parameters that can optionally be passed in. Data parameters are usually used to pass in numbers or strings or other type of variable data. We can start by quickly taking a look at what that looks like here. As you can see, these input parameters here are the parameters of our grant, the one that we saw before in our previous slides. Look how Anchor is very opinionated in how you should deserialize and serialize these objects. By using this derivative here, this directive, we're telling Anchor to use something called Borsch to serialize and deserialize our data. OK, quick segue back here. Let's take a look at our free instructions. On top here, we also have error messages. So again, Anchor is opinionated on how we define error messages. You just have to define an enum and put in this error code directive on top to start creating human-readable message IDs and messages that libraries can use. This all comes out of the box, and I'll show you after during some tests. Let's hop into our first instruction here, our initialize instruction, OK? And to make things a little bit easier, my wife was really kind enough to generate these amazing designs. So let's take a look here. Let's start with our accounts. There are 4 external accounts that are passed in. These 4 here. These are external accounts and are mentioned here. Here you can start seeing some of Anchor's power, right? So as you can see, Anchor allows you to extend the various security checks. The employer needs to be a signer. The employee needs to be different than the employer. The mint needs to be initialized. And the token account that we're passing in needs to be of the right mint and the right employer. Let's take a look at these PDAs. So you can define PDAs by just using the seeds directive here. So when you specify seeds, you're telling Anchor 2 things. The first thing is you want to make sure that you're telling Anchor that you want Anchor to check that the account passed in at that slot is correct in terms of it's derived by the right seeds, to avoid other accounts coming into that. The second thing is you tell Anchor how it should derive these accounts, so that then, if you're using a library that uses Anchor, IDLs, they can actually derive these accounts for you out of the box. And we're going to take a look at that after. The last thing I want to show you is this init statement that we have here on the grant and on the token account. These run even before our code runs at all, right? So this is our code. These runs even before. So this init statement is going to allocate space for our grant model, right? This is the model that we saw before. And on top of that, it's also going to set it to the right program. And the same thing here, it's going to create a new token account. Let's take a look at our grant. What does that look like? Again, we define a model, right? This is kind of like our model of MVC, right? This is our model here. We've defined it with a count. 3 pieces of information. The first one are the input parameters that we pass in. These will never change. The second one are the state parameters. These are going to change in the withdraw and revoke instruction. These public keys here, we're going to store for safety checks after. And this is a really good best practice in Anchor. I won't be covering bumps for the purpose of time. What you need to know is bumps make sure that our PDAs do not have a corresponding private key. So let's take a segue back, and let's look at our initialize code here. All right, so 3 things happen here. So this instruction is called by our employer. And the goal of this instruction is, first we're going to check the input parameters coming from the data field. We're going to make sure that there's no errors. If there are errors, we're going to exit out immediately. Second step is we're going to perform our first cross-program invocation, CPI. We're going to call into our token accounts to transfer the token. So we're going to call another program. Finally, we're going to store our grant information here. Let's take a look at how that works. So here, this is the first part of our instruction. So again, this is step number 1. If there's an error, we're going to exit. Notice how, in our transfer here, we're passing in the authority, right? So we're moving tokens from our employer account to our escrow account. And because of this, our employer is the signer here. So this is a little signer bit that I put. Because of that signer bit, the transfer can go through. Finally, this is a really nice syntax that I learned on Anchor to set the entire object. So here we're setting the entire grant model. And once we get to this line here, in just 116 lines of code with a tons of comments, look how much features we've built. Look how much functionality we've built. And this is our initialize instruction. Let's quickly go over a test for that. So we want to make sure we have at least 1 test, if not more, for each instruction. Anchor tests are written in TypeScript. And this is where you get the power of these IDLs. So these IDLs are kind of like an instruction book. They're a big JSON file, and they're an instruction book for your Anchor program, basically. They tell libraries how they should interact with your Anchor program. And because we're using TypeScript here, we get a lot of power. Look at this. You get autocomplete just by these libraries. And for example, if I forget to pass my initialize parameters, I'm going to get an error. One thing I wanted to mention is, notice how I only have 4 accounts specified here. I haven't passed in these, and I haven't passed in my system, my token program and my system program. This is because if we enable that seeds equals true, Anchor can just derive these through these 4 accounts. So it does all of that work for you. It's pretty special. That means you don't have to do PDA derivation yourself. Let's look at our withdraw instruction. So this is called by our employee when they want to withdraw. As you can see here, there's just 3 accounts. One thing to mention is now the constraints are changed because our grant account here is not initialized anymore. We're passing in the previous one. And so here we have more constraints. We want to make sure that the employee is the same one as our initialized instruction. And same thing, our employer. We want to make sure that our employee account, we want to make sure that all these constraints match and that our grant has not been revoked yet. This instruction is pretty much similar to the first one. I just want to show you one extra piece of info, which I think is really, really important, which is here. All right, cool. So now we're transferring tokens from our escrow token account, we're transferring them to our employee account. But the only account that can actually sign and transfer tokens and authorize transfers from this escrow token account is our escrow authority, which is a PDA. So there's no signature because there's no private key. So this is where we have to tell Solana that our authority is, in fact, a PDA, and we have to pass those signer seeds. So when we invoke this transfer instruction, we're passing in the right seeds, and this allows the transfer to succeed. Finally, one small thing I just wanted to mention here is when you perform an addition, always try to make sure that you're using check to add or any kind of operation that allows you to avoid for overflows. This is just best practice when you're writing programs or smart contracts in general. And let's quickly go over the revoke instruction. So again, this is called when Bob quits. Let's take a look at this one. So as you can see here, we have two token accounts, both the employer token account and the employee token account. Here they are. Of course, we're running all of the checks that we want to run. And here we have our same PDAs. We want to make sure that it's not revoked yet. Let's take a look at our revoke instruction. This is pretty much the same as our withdraw instruction. A couple things to mention that I wanted to mention before, but I forgot. So how do we get the current timestamp here? So we use this clock, right? So this, you can use clock.get, and then you can use clock.unit timestamp to actually get the timestamp from the program. This first part here of the program is exactly the same as our withdraw instruction. So remember, we want to transfer to the employee all the tokens that they vested. This is what is happening here. Then we want to reload their token account, right? So this token account now has changed after the CPI. So it's really important for us to reload it, and this is how you do it. And then we perform another transfer for all the remaining tokens back to our employer. Finally, we mark this grant as revoked. By marking it as revoked, what essentially happens is we prevent this instruction from being called again. So it cannot be called again here. Why? Because it's revoked equals false. So this constraint has to be maintained. If not, our program will not run. And same thing here. OK, so let's look into two things that I really like about Anchor. So as I mentioned, Anchor is not just about writing safe programs. It's also about setting those conventions that other programs or libraries can use. We're going to look into two things. The first one is going to be our testing, our IDLs. We're going to do Anchor build. What this is going to do is it's going to compile our program, and it's going to generate this IDL. So I just want to show it to you real quick. This is what an IDL looks like. It's kind of like an instruction manual, right? So it basically tells other programs or other libraries, not just TypeScript, also Python libraries, how to interpret, how to interact with your program. Take a look how cool this is. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create a new error. It's going to be called employer NGMI. And it happens if the employer puts a 0 token grant. So if the employer puts a 0 token grant, it's not going to make it. So we're going to build it. And take a look here. This code now, this object has been generated. So we're able to map a Solana code to an error name and an error message. Now, if we modify our unit tests in our initialized code, I've shown you this test before, but what I'm going to do is I want to try and trigger this. So I'm going to update my grant token amount to 0. These are the parameters that are getting passed in. And the other thing that I want to do is I'm going to go to my initialize instruction, and I'm going to uncomment these lines of code here. So we're going to say, if the grant token amount is 0, right, as a quick check, it's going to raise this error. All right, so let's try running a test. And just to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to use this dot only to make sure that it's going to run just this test here. And we've had quite a few live demos here. This is less of a live demo because obviously it's running locally. But as you can see here, right, how did this happen? So our library is actually able to provide a human-readable message. And the reason it's able to do this is because we're using these anchor IDLs. So these anchor IDLs are able to interpret how this works. Pretty cool. The last thing I wanted to mention is the testing framework, which I've kind of showed you, but I wanted to tell you a little bit more about it because it's pretty powerful. So as I mentioned before, testing anchor programs is not trivial. And you write anchor programs in Rust, but then you test them using TypeScript. When you run anchor tests, there's a lot of things that happen, actually. So let me just quickly show you that. I'm going to uncomment this. All right, let's go. So what's happening here? So we're building the anchor program. We're generating those IDLs. Then anchor test is going to spin up a local node. It's going to deploy our program. It's going to run all of our TypeScript. Hopefully, our tests are going to pass, and then the entire environment is torn down. This happens all for us just with one command, anchor test. So again, it really promotes that developer productivity. And it's really, really special to use it. It really makes it easier for newcomers. OK, so that's it for code. Why don't we switch back to our slides? OK, awesome. So hopefully, you've enjoyed this anchor code. And I know there's a lot of anchor pros in this stage, but maybe people at home will enjoy this too. People that are looking at this presentation from anywhere in the world. A quick thing about a program that I've started this year. It's called Office Hours. And it essentially allows anyone in the world to book some time with me to go over their anchor program or their Solana program. And again, I am far from an anchor expert or Solana expert, but I just love teaching, and I love to onboard new people into this community. So this is my way of giving back, basically. And personal shill, I've had some nice messages from people over this year that have enjoyed my office hours. So yeah, I encourage anyone to write in case you want to cover a particular subject together. Oh, I forgot actually one slide. Can you just quickly go back to my, my laptop? Yeah, I submitted these slides like a couple days ago, and I forgot the most important part of these slides, which are a lot of thank yous. So again, I just wanted to thank a couple people. My wife for obviously like building these amazing drawings. Henry, which is also is the speaker after this. And he's actually been reviewing my code, and he's really provided a lot of feedback. Armani is obviously the person who's created Anchor, so we really have to appreciate all he's done for us. And then, of course, the Phantom fam for being here and supporting me. So thank you so much. Quick, go back. I have one more slide. Can you quickly map back, please? Sorry about that. Awesome. And then, last but not least, this is my contact. We're hiring at Phantom, of course. We're always hiring. So please reach out in case you're interested in roles. I'd love to tell you more about what we do. And if I can help you in any way, just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Love that willingness to share your time and do office hours and help people with their code. I think it's that sort of spirit that is really amazing in the Solana community because we're all kind of learning together. And Daniel also mentioned that Henry Elder from Backpack is sort of an anchor expert, right? And he's actually going to be our next speaker, and we're going to kind of keep the anchor train rolling. But I think, another thing that Daniel touched on was, like, these tools are very, very new. The reality is that, we're all still learning about how to use them most effectively, and no one really has all the answers. But on this stage, you're hearing from experts who are trying to share sort of what they've learned and are looking to learn from all of you, which is pretty amazing. I also would suggest, I see a lot of you with these headphones. You can grab some at the back of the hall here. It's a little bit echoey. We have a little bit of a large space. So if you're having a little trouble hearing or you just want to focus in, would suggest grabbing some of those back there. So I think we're ready for our next presenter. So please join me in welcoming Henry from Backpack to continue talking about Anchor.
OK, hello. In this talk, I'm going to be talking a little bit more intermediate level Anchor stuff for people who may have missed certain changes in Anchor over the last year. I like PDAs a lot, program derived addresses, so I'm going to be talking about that. Random tidbits, just things that I've picked up in the Solana ecosystem, and then what's next for Anchor and future kind of macros that we're working on. So, ready for my talk. So again, you probably already know, but Anchor is what you'd use to write smart contracts on Solana. You can write it using the normal Solana default stuff, but Anchor makes it a bit easier. It adds a bunch of macros to write a bunch of boilerplate code. And it also makes it easier to write a client to interact with those smart contracts. So there's the TypeScript client, but there's also Rust clients and Python clients with AnchorPy. And so who am I? I started working for Anchor in the last sort of month or two. I'm sort of becoming like the new maintainer, so I'll be writing a lot of the new source code for Anchor and all that kind of thing. All right, next slide. So new features you may have missed. This is the best one that I liked. No more hex codes. This is a big issue in the Discord where you would get a random hex code from your program log, and you'd have to decrypt that and figure it out. But there's no more of that. You should be seeing a line number from your program, like an actual error message. And if you have a values comparison, you're also going to get that as well. So like, let's say you're comparing two public keys. It will show what was the right one, what was the wrong one, and it becomes a whole lot easier to debug all of your stuff. And if you're not seeing this, they're in the program logs. So you either need to try catch on your transaction, or you really need to use no pre-flight checks, this kind of option when you're sending the transaction, and then look into the program log directory to see this error. But if you're not finding it, come to the Discord and we'll try and sort you out. Yeah, this is another big thing just addressed in the previous talk. Auto-derived or auto-inferred program-derived addresses. One of the biggest hassles, I guess, when writing a program is making an SDK that will gather together all of the public keys that you need. And if you write your PDAs, your program-derived addresses, using a certain set of seeds, like there's a specific format that you need to use, and all of the formats are listed out on this PDA derivation lib.rs file. If you use those formats, then Anchor in the client will be able to auto-generate those public keys for you, and that saves a lot of time. And then recently, that's also been extended to include the has-one relationship. So if you've got a has-one relationship, like I have a certain account, it will auto-infer what that public key is, and you no longer have to worry about passing it in manually. So it just saves a lot of time and effort. And if you don't know how to activate this feature, it's a feature flag in the anchor.toml. So you just need to switch seeds equals true, and you should be able to get access to that. Cool. All right. Next one. Yeah, this is another big change. If you use program-derived addresses, you used to have to pass in the bump. So it's called the bump seed. It's Anchor enforces that we use the canonical bump seed, right? So you start at the number 0, and you iterate up to 255, and you stop at the first one that gives you a public key that falls off of the curve, or whatever kind of like crypto shit that involves. So we enforce that you use the canonical seed, but you no longer have to pass in the bump. So again, it was one of these kind of hassles where you'd have to pre-calculate, you have to find program address, get the bump, pass it in, no more of that. It's also more efficient as well. I think in the back end, it was calculating the bump like 2 or 3 times. So there's no more of that, which is pretty handy. And when you want to access the bumps, they're stored on the context object. So it's just context.bumps, and then it's a B-tree map. And you have the name of the account that you're looking for. So definitely use that if you can. Cool. This is also new. Maybe you missed it. It's the AVM. It's the recommended way to install Anchor now, the Anchor CLI. Aside from making it easier to install Anchor, if you're working with an older program of Anchor, which I think a lot of people do because there's a lot of open source programs that are using older versions, the CLI version has to match up with the program version that you're using. And this makes it super easy to switch between versions. So if you want to go back to version 14 or version 20, I think we're on version 25 at the moment, AVM, which I assume stands for Anchor Version Manager and not virtual machine, then that's what you should do. Cool. Anchor Expand. This is just more like an advertisement. I think everyone should read the generated source code that comes out of Anchor. So a lot of the magic from Anchor is the macros. And if you want to read what the macros are generating, you would typically run cargo expand. But Paul X added a thing called Anchor Expand, which is just a wrapper around cargo expand, which puts it into the .anchor directory. So it's kind of easy to access, and you can see all the different versions over time. And also, if you're not aware of it, in your root directory for your Anchor program, there is a .anchor folder, and that's where you'll also find stuff like the program logs and stuff to do with the test validator that gets spun up. All right, cool. So I'm contractually obligated to mention all of these other things. Recently, I think they added IDLs, so the interface description language, for all the SPL programs and other programs that are just not like written in Anchor, so that you can make easier clients and still use the Anchor syntax. There's the Anchor book that I think is sort of half finished by Paul. It's got a lot of descriptions and information about how to use Anchor. There's apr.dev. That's the Anchor program repository. It's where we verify programs. Then there's a new feature that's being requested a lot called optional accounts. So I think it's kind of controversial feature in the sense that like you can choose whether or not to pass in certain accounts. And personally, my like opinionated opinion is that when you're like making optional choices, those sort of options should happen in the client. And most of the logic should happen in the client, not in the smart contract. But it's just such a massive demanded feature that I think this is coming in the next version that we release. And then also Backpack, which is Armani's new wallet, which is very cool, is going to have like native support for Anchor clients. So Anchor uses a provider object to interact with wallets and stuff. And in Backpack, you're just going to get that object automatically, although I don't really know what that means. All right, program-derived addresses. I think everyone's been PDA pilled at the moment, like by now. They're like the way to write secure Solana smart contracts, basically. And there's a lot of weird features about them that you have to figure out by yourself, or like here in the rumor mill. All right, try again. OK, so the first really cool thing that's been added is, all right, there used to be a limitation that program-derived addresses could only have 10 kilobytes in space. And that's not enough, right? Because I want all my accounts to be PDAs. So for example, Serum, all of the Serum order books would be at least 60 kilobytes, if not more. And now with Realloc, you can allocate 10 kilobytes, up to 10 kilobytes, every instruction. So you can have like 12 instructions, I think, per transaction. So you can just pump that all in there if you want to. And Anchor has support for this using Realloc, these Realloc constraints. And it's really recommended that you use the Anchor constraints. Because if you try and go and do it manually, the Solana native runtime won't check that you're not allocating more than 10 kilobytes. So if you go in and do it manually and you allocate more than 10 kilobytes, you can actually run the risk of overriding data in other accounts. And there's no checks for this. So try and use the constraints if you can, or be very careful. So another cool kind of PDA thing that maybe not everyone knows about, these are system program-owned PDAs. So again, to recap, a program-derived address is derived from the program's public key. It can only be signed for by the program used in the derivation. But that address doesn't actually need to be owned by the program that it's used to derive. So the most obvious example of this is the associated token account, where you have an account that's being derived from the associated token account, but the account itself is owned by the token program. But more interestingly is to have a system program-owned PDA. And why would you want something like that? Well, if you want to use create account is sort of a simplification for like using the system program to create a new account, assign the data, transfer the LAN ports, assign it to an owner. You need to have a system program to be the payer for that. And this allows you to have a program-derived address be the payer for all of your new accounts. So for example, in SPL Gov, the DAO program, you can now use a DAO governance to pay for all of your accounts. So if I want to use it to generate a new Serum account, 60 kilobytes, I don't want to have to this is what we did previously. You'd have to have like a separate payer, someone off-chain, but now your DAO can pay for everything that's going in there. So that's that. This one is more kind of Galaxy Brain. Again, just kind of a weird thing that I came across that I think more people would like to know about maybe. This is more like a self-authority PDA. If you notice, you're initializing a mint account, so that's an SPL token mint, which you use to mint new tokens. The authority is the mint account itself, which is pretty wacky. It means that, yeah, the PDA, the program signs for every time it wants to mint new accounts. Now, why would you want to do this? Maybe you want to save accounts, right? So instead of having to pass in a mint and a mint authority, which is the signer for creating the tokens, now you only have to pass in one token account, and maybe that sort of efficiency is something that you're really looking for. But good to know about. Again, just more random stuff. When you're trying to return seeds to sign a cross-program invocation, you usually want to store them in something easy, right? You want to store them in a function or a macro. And this macro is sort of the easiest way that I've seen to store seeds for doing cross-program invocation. I got it from Christian Kam's Blockworks or Mango voter stake registry. And it's the nicest one, because there's a lot of awkwardness if you're trying to make a function that will return the seeds because of how references and slice references and U8s and all this stuff work in Rust. So this is what it actually looks like when you call it. So you've got your ctx.accounts, transfer, and then with signer, and then you invoke your macro with the market account. Cool. Oh yeah, seeds collision. I thought maybe everyone knows about this already, but all of the bytes get smashed together. So if you've got a bunch of seeds, Solana native runtime doesn't care that you separated them when you're inputting them. All the bytes get treated as equivalent. Now, as far as I'm aware, no one has been hacked using this yet, but it's just something to be aware of if you hadn't heard of it before. And I don't think no one checks it basically. So again, more just random tidbits. Duplicate accounts. So Anchor, this is one of the kind of foot guns, I guess, left in Anchor. It doesn't check that you're passing in the same public key in multiple locations. So if you're repeating the account, it doesn't check for that. And so the story behind that was kind of funny recently, somebody made an airdrop program. So they wanted to just give out, 0.1 sol to a bunch of people, and they would get the wallet so that someone would sign up for the Phantom wallet. They wouldn't have any kind of Solana at the time, and they would call this program. And the program looked relatively well written, but in the client, the guy was passing in the user's wallet, which signed, as the public key for a program account that was to be initialized. So this then turned that account into a programmed-owned account, and it effectively bricked the wallet. So you can't use your wallet anymore because the account is owned by another program. Now, I don't know, there's some details about whether that should be possible, because there are checks when you're using create account that there are no LAMP ports in the account. So I don't know how he did this, but that's just one kind of weird example. And then account types. There's lots of account types in Anchor, and you should really know them all. Some of the ones that I don't think that people are necessarily as aware of, there will Signer. I think a lot of people know about Signer, but system account. So if you've got a system account, like an account that you know that will be owned by the system program, for example, if it's going to be a payer or a signer, but not like actually signing, then you would use system account. So just reminding you of that. And then obviously box. You'll know about box because you'll run into it when you try to Google, why do I have a stack heap error? Like, why am I running out of stack memory? So there's not many documentation for box, but there's a lot on the Discord from people running out of memory. That's just highlighting that one. Cool. And so similar to the accounts is the constraints. Compared to the accounts, I would say the constraints are relatively well documented. So I would really recommend to just go through the docs, the Rust docs, and just read about all the constraints. I just picked my favorite bits that I don't think everyone knows about. Anchor doesn't check whether you have the mutable constraint. So what this means is that if you forget to write mutable above your account and you edit the data in that account as mutable, at the end of the instruction, it will just reset that data. So it'll go back to 0, and you'll be like, I keep updating the data in my account, and then I pull it into the client, and it's still zeroed out. What the hell's going on? Well, it's probably you forgot to put mute in. Also, some people maybe don't know about the constraint that you can use address. So constraint equals account.key equals some account.authority is kind of a painful way to write it. So instead, you can just write address equals some account.authority. And then this is kind of another funny one. You might have seen the token constraint. So there's like token -- mint or token .. authority. And you can use those interchangeably. So you don't just have to use them with initialization. You can actually use them to check, does this token have the correct mint? Does it have the correct authority? So you can use them individually. You can use them with or without mint. And you can actually use them with public keys or with the accounts themselves. And any combination of those things should work. But if it doesn't, come tell us, and we'll see what we can do about fixing that. Let's try next one. Again, this is another thing that's becoming a little bit more widely known as more programs get built using it. It's just a different layout for your programs that I think is a little bit cleaner. I think Jet was one of the first ones to do it, and then a bunch of other people as well. I made a short video as well covering this. So essentially what it is you've still got your lib.rs, and that's where you've got all of your instruction handlers, but they call out to the individual instruction, modules, like new order and cancel order. And what's good about that is that you have one file, new order, which contains all the accounts that are going into that instruction. It contains the function logic, and it also contains all the access controls, so any sort of additional constraints beyond the account constraints that you want to apply. And that's really nice for auditors to not have to go looking for all of that stuff. So yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. And I think Armani also released a new XNFT program which uses this layout. And this is something that I personally just use a lot in a lot of recent projects. So it's called Anchor Client Gen. What it does is it's a static client generator from an IDL. And what you get from that is just better errors, really. I think the errors from the native Anchor are a little bit less clean just because of how the TypeScript works. And when you have a static client gen, it looks nicer. I think there's Metaplex have also released something called Solida, which is also not particularly well known, that does something very similar. So it gives more real errors, and I personally used it in a lot of my recent projects before I joined Anchor. So I definitely recommend it, or at least looking into it. And then, again, some more random tidbits, things I say on Discord a lot. people ask good questions. You know, people come to the Discord and they say, look, I've got this problem, and here are the contexts. And I'm like, that's such a good question for the Stack Exchange, because on Discord we've been answering questions for like, I don't know, what is it, a year and a half now, and all of the old Serum stuff is deleted from the Serum Discord, and all of the Anchor Discord stuff is probably lost or changed. So yeah, please go to the Solana Stack Exchange, ask your question there. It seems like it's pretty active and people are answering a lot. I go there, and if I see any unanswered Anchor questions, I try to go through it like once every couple of days. Another thing people complain about a little bit is that there's no docs. So if you want to know how to use some of the syntax, check out Anchor/tests, particularly the MISC directory, because you wouldn't really look there because it's called MISC, but it actually has almost all of the syntax that you would need to know in terms of how to use like certain constraints or account types, stuff like that. And then similar to like what I was griping about before with like the optional accounts, there's a thing called a init if needed. It's a constraint, and it's behind a feature flag so that not too many people will use it. It initializes account if it's not already initialized. So like a token account might not be initialized. That's not too dangerous. But again, I feel like a lot of the logic that is being used by init if needed should just be done in the client. Like in your client, just load up a token account. Is the token account there? If it's not, then just include a create instruction. It's just not that difficult necessarily. So that's just my personal opinion. OK, there's so much time left. So now if I've generated any goodwill at all, I'm about to destroy it by going off the rails because like this stuff is kind of new and a bit rough. So I'm going to like ad-lib a little bit. So there's a lot of hype about Move. And I know that there was like, when this hype was happening, maybe it was like a couple of months ago, there was some talks about different ways that like Move could be put on Solana. I think I saw 3 different ways that they talked about doing it, like transpilers, compilers. But none of them seemed like it was really like a meaningful way. Like maybe you'd get the Move syntax, but you wouldn't really get the features that make Move kind of good, like these compile time checks. So instead, the question is, why can't we just learn the lessons from Move, like whatever they did or whatever they thought was good, and apply them to Anchor? Because that's just how code works. You can just change the code and make it better. So I didn't really put in these slides, but there's a really good blog post by Robert Chen from OtterSec called Move, an Auditor's Introduction. And in that, he talks about one of the main things that people talk about or praise in Move, which is the type checker. And the type checker system in Move is good in a way because it tells you a compile time if you've used the wrong type. And the types are very specific. So for example, if you're using, say, like a Serum token or a Mango token, and you didn't pass, specifically, they're their own types. The Mango token is its own type, and you can't accidentally pass it in somewhere else, or else the compiler will complain to you. But what Robert Chen argues in that blog post is that that is kind of like an anti-pattern. You're checking the types are correct, but that's not really what you want to check. In fact, the type checker, it only works because in a lot of cases, there's only one instance per type. So you can't have multiple instances of, say, the Serum token theoretical Move type. Or when they're initializing the type, they check that no one already exists. And this is very similar to what we see in Solana, right? Where, for example, Casio was hacked for $50 million. And what the hacker did was they created an account of the right type. It was like a storage account or something. But it was malicious. It wasn't the right one that the program was expecting. So that's what you want to avoid. You want to associate like the actual instance with other instances or other resources. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have accounts that live on other accounts. This is kind of the way to say it. And this will sort of automate all of the has-one checks and the PDA checks that you might have accidentally missed. Because if you want to access any of the accounts that you expect to exist within position, you have to access them using, like, I'll show you the syntax later. It's like position.authority or position.market to actually look at the details of those accounts. And now I'm just going to check that I haven't sort of like omitted anything important. Yeah, it's a source of truth approach. So when I was like, this is one of the reasons I talked to Robert Chen about this, was like, when I'm writing my PDAs, I use the approach of having a source of truth. I think he calls it root of trust, where there's like a single account that gets passed in, or one of many, that acts as the thing that you rely on for all of the other seeds. So you say that this is the one that says what is the base seed for like the program type or the token type, and you use that in all of the other accounts to check. And this is just a more efficient way to do that by having the accounts live on other accounts. So what does the, let's look at the account struct now. So you can see the account struct now has some of the syntax that we would have used previously for the derive accounts macro struct or whatever it was. So you've got your signer, your account, and they live on the data account. Now, in reality, they only live on there as a public key, but you access them as if they were directly linked. Like, for example, on Move, I think they do really live more like inside each other, so to speak. But Solana works differently, so. And then this is the syntax you use to access it. You've got your context, .accounts, .position, .market, .tvl. And now it's really difficult to pass in the wrong market account or pass in the wrong authority. And then, yeah, we're also going to switch to using zero copy. So some people give out about how Anchor's default is Borscht, serialization, deserialization, because that's a little bit slow. It has a lot of compute units. Also, the current zero copy is actually unsafe. We just like we just unsafely say, we trust you. Whatever's in your struct, and you put zero copy over it, we're just going to trust that it's safe. But we're going to get rid of that. So there are some new restrictions that will come with using like actual safe zero copy, but hopefully that will be balanced out by the safety and whatnot. Yeah, that's it basically. So I don't know. I've still got like 3 minutes left if anyone wants to ask any questions, although I might not answer them. Cool. Thank you. Go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Henry. Really appreciate it. I love those technical talks. And just a quick reminder that all of the talks and speeches out here are going to be posted on YouTube within 1 hour of them occurring. So for these more technical demonstrations with a lot of code, obviously, sometimes it can be hard to follow along, but it's easy to go back and watch any parts you may have missed, take screenshots, etc. So don't worry if you miss something in one of these talks. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We have one more talk until the break for lunch. And so we're actually going to discuss something that I haven't seen on the stages yet at Breakpoint, which is sports betting and protocols for sports betting. So I'm really excited to introduce Stuart from BetDex, who's going to talk about the Monaco protocol and share that with all of you. So please join me in welcoming him.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name's Stuart Tonner. I have quite a heavy Scottish accent, so I'll apologise before I asked them to subtitle it, but they didn't allow me to do it. So I'm here to speak about the Monaco protocol. I'm Stuart. I'm from a company called BetDex Labs. We're a core contributor to the Monaco protocol. We do sports betting, and the Monaco protocol is designed to be the open source infrastructure, runs on a blockchain, open source infrastructure for prediction markets, which is exactly what the tagline says right there. So in this technical workshop, I'm going to walk you through some of the SDK, some of the different things that we've got, and what exactly that means, and what we can do, and what you can build with it. So what I'll do is I'll just move on. There's a little bit of an introduction. What the Monaco protocol is decentralized liquidity network that allows people to build exchanges on Solana. We provide the infrastructure. We've got deployed programs that allow third-party applications to build prediction markets and access a shared liquidity pool. This shared liquidity pool is spread across the entire. Anyone that uses the Monaco protocol has access to this liquidity pool, and this is one of the powerful things of the Monaco protocol. We have an on-chain matching algorithm, an order book that allows users to express an opinion. An opinion is something that they believe will happen. Will the price of Sol be above $40 by the end of Breakpoint? Maybe a bit contentious at the moment, but we can set these markets up and have an outcome like that people can put their money into and bet against that. Users submit an order to have it matched against the best possible price available in the market, and that's one of these things that is understated, in that if there is a more optimum way for a trade to get fulfilled, the system will automatically take that in order to make sure the user is getting the most value for their inputted trades. We have orders that are matched as part of this. So we match against the opposite side of the trades. We build this liquidity pool based on price, and we match against the liquidity that's on that available market. The protocol manages order matching, user market position, market liquidity pools is all handled within that within the protocol. So as a developer, as an engineer, as someone who's building on this, all you really have to do is work out the prices, submit your order, everything else is handled, and you're submitting into a system that has the global liquidity pool. So that's an introduction. That's what the Monaco protocol is. What I'd like to do is a couple of aims, is that we have contributed so much. We have a lot in the SDK. It would be too much to deliver today. So we've broken, the SDK is broken down to two key areas. One is a user SDK, which allows people to add, remove, cancel their own user trades into the system. And the other is the admin SDK, which if you're wanting to build a platform, a site, anything like that, you would use the admin SDK to build markets, set this up, set your outcomes, whatever you want to do, but that's more on the admin side. The aim of this workshop, we're going to focus more on the user SDK side. I will come back to the admin SDK in a couple of moments. We're going to focus on the user SDK and run through some of the things that we do there and some of the toolings that we've got. So, moving along. If you want to follow along, this is not going to be a get the laptop out technical. It's not going to be as in-depth as that, because it's we've got a lot to cover. All the resources are here. We've packaged the client up into an npm package, which you can get just by running the standard npm commands to install a package. The references down at the bottom, we have both the Monaco SDK and the Monaco client are available. Go and have a look at them. They're on the Monaco Protocol GitHub. Lots of examples, information, walkthroughs, everything is in there. So I would encourage everyone to have a look at that. So if we're at the point we've maybe got this installed, which I'm going to guess not many people are going to do just for the time, we'll move on and we'll do some actions on the chain and see what we've got. So first thing is first, before we place any order or any trades, what we have to do is find a market. We have to find where it's going to go, what we're going to do. This function here, and you'll see throughout this presentation that the Monaco protocol, we've tried not to be too imaginative with our names. So, function names. So, get market accounts by status. Probably everyone in this room could guess what that did. So, by passing in the get market accounts by status and passing in a parameter of open for the status, you'll get a list of all the open markets, and that's the open markets that are available on the protocol. Doesn't necessarily matter whether you've created them, someone else created them, doesn't matter. The idea being that you would be able to see a market for a football game, even though you've not created, and still add liquidity onto that. This button here, I think down here, so here's the public keys that get returned. We've got everything wrapped, which hopefully it says true up there. If there are any errors or anything, we have some error handling that comes back that allows you to know what's happened and different things like that. This is actually a very benign call. This is quite an easy one because it just returns sort of read-only data. But later as we move through, there's a couple calls that wouldn't do that. So what do we have here? So we've got the markets and we've got the public key for each one of the markets. So any one of these up here, what we'll do is we'll now have a look at those markets and see what the state of those markets would be. What's very interesting for anyone that's wanting to place a trade on a market is that we can know the prices. Super important, because you've gone at the wrong price, you've not got it matched correctly, and it's all for someone that's wanting to put an order on, they have to know the correct prices. Again, this is where the lack of imagination and function naming comes in. We've got the handy-dandy get market prices function. Really, again, it does what it says exactly. You pass in the program market primary key, and you fetch all the market prices. So this here is the call, and this is the response. So the response on the left, up here, is truncated. So I've taken some of it out, but this will give you information about the amount of liquidity that's available, the different price points, like how many orders are in the queue. It gives you a load of stuff. I've had to cut it just to fit it on the slide. Each response, each element in that market prices is a price point. And you can see here, if I'll go up on this one up here, so you can see here, this price point up here, you have a price point, which is the odds for the pool. You have a for outcome flag. The for outcome is whether you believe that this outcome will happen or not, so you've backed this outcome. In this particular case, we have not backed it, and the matching pool has a list of items and their addresses there. Each individual price pool has its own list of unmatched orders. You can see here, you see here, you see here. These orders sit and wait to be matched as part of a matching algorithm that I'll speak about in just a few moments. Once an order has been fully matched, and a fully matched order would be if someone put in $10, let's say $10, just puts in $10 and it gets matched for $10. There's basically enough liquidity on both sides to match. And a partially matched order would be one where there's $10, but there's only been 5 matched against it. So that can happen, and the reason that happens is for flexibility a bit later on. We'll explain that. But partially matched orders remain in the queue to be picked up and attempted to be matched again. So we've got this continual system of pulling things, trying to match them. But for us doing the technical workshop, the important thing is that we have now got the state of the market. We know the liquidity amounts, we know the activity in the market, we know basically where the money is and what we'd like to do. And the money on this response and the orders on this response usually is a good indication of what the market is like. So you can sort of rate these and work out how likely things are to happen. So we've got this. So we've got our market. We've got a response. We've got our prices. I've got a very, very quick if anyone wants to try this out. Again, pretty sure it's not going to happen. So. But we have an example code on the GitHub for get market prices. When we've built the SDK, we've built this out so that there's lots and lots of examples for this. For every function has an example. Every function has something you can do. This is a snippet of the code that was actually there that I've just copied and pasted in just to give you an indication of how we've built it. If you follow the instructions, set the SDK up, it really is just as simple as npm run get markets on your command line. Pass in the market ID, which your market public key, and you'll see the prices. See this response back here on the command line. So just an example, all of the functions that we have these examples. So if you're wanting to build something, go in, look at the examples, plagiarize it as much as you like. It's all open source, and that's what we've got. So now we have our markets. We have the market matching pools. We know exactly what we're doing. What we want to do is we want to create an order in a market. So we want the user to come around and say, and in this particular case, we know the state, and this particular order here that I've set up is, I don't know if there's any fans of this football team, but I'm going to butcher the name. Bayer Leverkusen. No, I know that's not how you pronounce it at all, so apologies. It's my, again, Scottish accent. This is a little snippet of code that allows the user, or the person running the code, to create an order on market outcome index 0, which is here, which is the outcome that we want to support. It's a for outcome, which means that we believe this outcome will happen. So I'm backing this team to win. With a price of 2 and a stake of 1. So price being the odds and a stake being the amount of money we're going to put on the line. Simple as just calling it, and this is the response back. You can see this sort of response system here that shows you errors and whether it's successful and things. This is a bit less benign, this function, in that you will get errors back according to the state of the system. So the system itself will enforce that if a market is locked or the event started, or it's suspended, or for example, it rains and we suspend a market, your market gets suspended because everyone's gone home, and the market's suspended, then you wouldn't be able to place an order on a market that's no longer available. Again, same kind of idea with the order key coming back and transaction ID, all of which can be looked at and verified through Explorers. And you can also see how matched the order is, partially matched and all that from that. So, very, very quick note on outcome indexes, which for those that don't work with this code is probably won't make, outcome index isn't really a thing that I've seen many people use, or it's not a term people would use. Every market has their own outcome index, the outcome index being the index of the outcome. So in this particular case, you've got 3 teams. I won't try and pronounce them again. Something, a draw, and Club Brugge. And each of them has an index. There's 2 helper functions, and what we're trying to do with the SDK, every time you commit something, is build out these helper functions. So you've got, you'll get market outcomes by market, which gets you the outcomes. But we've also got things like get market outcome titles by market as a convenience, to pull this out. So this idea, so you can pull the titles out if you want to put it on a UI. You can get the outcome indexes if you want to build it into a system. So that's just a little note on that. So every outcome has an outcome index. So this is the heaviest slide I've got, so I'm going to apologize for there's no pictures on this. So what we've got here is just a little context around the trade matching. So once you create a trade, it goes into the system. We saw the big queue, we saw how it sits, and once the trade is placed by the user, the protocol will attempt to match it against the available liquidity on the opposite side. Example here is if I back outcome A, I believe outcome A will occur. Whatever local team is hopefully going to win. For a given staking price, there must be enough liquidity on the lay side, and the lay being that the person believes that outcome will not occur, to ensure that no matter the winning outcome, there's enough funds to pay the winners. So whatever money I put forward, somebody else has to put the other side. We get matched together. System ends up at 0 at the end. That's the idea. And I mentioned this a little earlier as well about bets being partially matched. So I've used the word bet. We sort of use bet in trades, sort of. So a bet can also get partially matched if there is only some liquidity available in the pool. So again, example, you pay in 10. Someone creates a bet for 5 or a trade for 5. That 5 will get matched, and the system will use up that liquidity. It's a shared pool of liquidity, so that allows the flexibility. So it's not A must match with B sort of principle. So, quick recap: we've got our market, we've got our outcomes, we know what we're doing, we know our price, we're dead on to win. But it turns out that the outcome, they've knocked 3 goals in, and all of a sudden, oh, I need to cancel my order. We have a very unimaginatively titled method called cancel order, where you pass in the order public key, and it will cancel the order. It will take that money off the market. There are a few little notes with this, in that if you are partially matched, you've got the 10 in, 5 has been matched, you can only cancel off the unmatched portion of this. So the reason being is obviously the 5 that has been put into the liquidity pool is now part of the match for everybody else, so we can't undo that. So that's if you want to take it off. All this is very useful if you're maybe trying to build either the front end or also build a sort of automatic system that does these things behind the scenes. So let me just move on to cancelled. So at this point, we've got the flow. We've got find markets, created bets. We've done all the things we need to do from a user point of view. The user admin is far more featured than what I'm demonstrating here, so I encourage everyone to go and have a look. What I wanted to touch on was just slightly the admin SDK. And the admin SDK is where a lot of the power will be for builders. And the admin SDK allows you and anyone building to create markets, build sites, manage markets, change admin permissions, set your odds, set outcomes, different permissions. Basically anything you want to do to set up your site and what you want to do. So if you wanted to run a site that deals with the local darts tournament, if you want to run a site that donkey racing, whatever you want to do, you set it up and you can do that. BetDex as a company, I'll show you in a minute, is focused on sports betting, but go off and build whatever you like for anything. One interesting point on this, which should have made it into the slides, but I actually forgot to put up, is that every created market doesn't use a set token. You set the token at the start, so you decide what token the market's going to run in, and that governs what someone pays in, whatever token it would be, and it governs what they're paid out. So there's no conversion on the protocol at this point. The reason being, it makes it a lot simpler. So if you've got a community that wants to create something, you can use your own token for that and build value in that. Some of the examples are like, if you maybe get Twitch tokens, if you get something else, use those tokens. Mint a token, just use it. There's a couple tools I was going to run through as well, where we've got the Monaco SDK, we've got calls covered, get market with status, event, wagering tokens, place orders, cancel orders, get market positions. The market positions for a wallet is very interesting because the protocol handles exposure and the user's market position to ensure that they are not overpaying, that they're not committing. The classic example is if you back a team to win and you also lay them to win, then they either win or they don't win. Like, one outcome is going to get paid out. You don't have to pay in twice. You only have to put your stake in once. And that covers that. It's a very simplistic example, but the protocol will handle all this and hold that data. And this is what this fetches: get all trades for orders, get wallet token balances. So that's the Monaco protocol. That's the SDKs. Sure, if anyone's got any questions, you can ask me. But what I was wanting to do was to show you a couple of examples. So I'm very proud of this one. This is the BetDex beta site, which soon to be live site. My co-founders Varun and Nigel did a great talk yesterday all about sports betting and how BetDex has announced our launch. So very, very exciting. So you can see here, this is what you can build. We use this. BetDex uses the SDK, and you can kind of see what you can do with it, the power of it. Browse available markets. You can see the prices. You can place bets. You get trades. You've got an order book, different outcomes. Everything is up there. So we're hoping it's going to be a shining example of what you could do with the Monaco protocol. So yeah, I encourage everyone to go and have a look, play around with it, and have a look. It's absolutely fantastic. The visualizations is an interesting part in that we pull the data from the Monaco protocol to give us these kind of visualizations up here that allow us to draw graphs and allow us to do different things, which everything contributes to informing the user and allowing them to make sensible decisions and where they want to place their funds. Another one, we've very kindly got permission from the SAML community. They've been having a look at the SDK, and they're building out their own version of a site. They've got an on-chain SAML prediction market on the Monaco protocol, which is looking really cool. They're using SAML behind the scenes. Obviously, it's their community. And they're using the Monaco SDK to create markets. They've got UI there, create bets, do everything that they need to do, and they're building that out just for their community, obviously for using. So yeah, and like it says at the bottom, they can make your predictions with SAML. So very cool there. We've got one final example for everyone, which steps away from the UI side of things, and sort of gives you hopefully a bit of an idea as to how powerful things could be behind the scenes. And this is an example of a market seeder that we've made, which again is in the SDK in the Monaco protocol. We use the SDK and use it very quickly to create bets, to create liquidity onto a market. The reason why this might be very, very useful is if you've maybe got institutional folks that are wanting to put liquidity on very quickly. If you've got people that are wanting to move their price points, watch the total amount of money they've got committed, and move what they're doing. These tools, so this particular tool will seed a market. We'll be able just to put a lot of money onto a market, set the correct price points, and make it so that a user can come and use it, and they can bet against different markets. If you know someone who wants to build something that is a more a back-end tool, this is the kind of thing that you would want to be doing. Inspect the market, see where the gaps are, see where the edge is, put your, create bets, cancel bets, move the money about as you're wanting to do. So it's very cool, very fast, and again, it's another thing that's yeah, very proud of. So just going to move on. I've got one more slide, and it's the obligatory thank you so much slide. So yes, thank you for your time. I've got, anyone's got any questions, I will talk at length about this. We've got the website for the Monaco Protocol up there. We've got an email up there as well, and this is my Telegram here as well. So if anyone wants to get in contact, anyone wants to talk about it, I promise you I could talk about this all day. It's been a lot of work to get to this point. But yeah, so if anyone wants to talk to me about this, talk about liquidity pools, just give me a shout. But I think that's the end of my slide. So I'll be milling around if anyone's got any thoughts, any comments, any questions. But other than that, I'm just going to say thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much. Thank you. Whoops.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stuart. I love those examples at the end, just the power of software, right? The power of an SDK and so many different use cases, even ones you wouldn't think of when you create open source technology. So really amazing stuff. And now we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back at 2 p.m., so almost an hour-long break. Feel free to grab lunch in the back here. The food's been delicious all week. Take a step outside, use the restroom. And we'll be back at 2 p.m. with our final talks of the conference. So see you soon. Hope everyone had a great break. Oh, thank you so much. Love that warm welcome. Thank you, thank you. Hope everyone had a great break. You were able to go outside and enjoy another beautiful day in Lisbon. It's incredible that we're almost at the end of Breakpoint. It has flown by. So many amazing presenters on this stage. But we have 2 more amazing sessions for you. And so I'll kick it off by introducing an amazing panel that we have to discuss a very important issue, which is decentralization. Heard a lot about that this week, but I think these panelists are going to provide some incredible insight as to how to think about decentralization. So I'll let the moderator, Dan Albert from the Solana Foundation, introduce the panelists, but please join me in welcoming them.
Hello, everybody. Happy day 3. We made it. This is incredible. My name's Dan Albert. I'm the executive director of the Solana Foundation. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to everyone who's made this production possible. So I want to talk about what is sometimes a rather contentious and a little unsexy topic, which is decentralization, centralization, or lack thereof. Depending on your perspective, this is a good thing, this is a terrible thing, and no one on Twitter can seem to agree on it. What I wanted to talk about here is, like, what is decentralization? Why do we care? Why should people care? What can we do at the Solana Foundation as the broader Solana community to promote decentralization? And how do we think about this, right? How is Solana doing? There's a lot of different ways that we can measure, quantify, kind of argue about what is decentralized enough, what does this mean? You know, there's not a single black and white metric that kind of makes this definition. But what I want people to understand is, like, how, at least for me, kind of how Solana Foundation views this incredibly important topic, but also how the Solana Network is doing, and how some of our members here kind of think about this, and what it can really bring to the whole Solana universe. So I want to introduce our panelists. We have Felix from Chorus One and Chris from Chainflow. Now, Chorus One and Chainflow, these are some of our most OG validators. They've brought a lot to the network. Both of these guys were around when Solana mainnet launched. They were around even before that. They helped us get testnet running, helped us get mainnet running, helped design a lot of kind of the early decentralization principles of Solana. So thank you guys for being here. So I guess I'm kind of going to open with, like, this first big idea is, like, why should people care about decentralization, right? We've got all this wonderful tech, Solana's super fast, it's got these amazing properties, and there's all this argument, decentralization, is it centralized or not? So Chris, maybe I'll start with you. I know you've done a lot of thinking and writing on this topic, so like, why should anyone who's developing on Solana, thinking about this chain or the other chain, why should they care?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think, to me, centralization is really the foundation of why we're here. And without decentralization, really not a lot of these other things matter. At Chainflow, for example, we're hoping to build crypto infrastructure for a better future, essentially. And to us, that means that, everybody hear me or not? No?
Shout. New York style. You gotta.
Yeah. Is this better? Yeah. So basically, to me, without decentralization, a lot of this stuff we're doing doesn't really matter because decentralization is the foundation of what we're building. Thank you. And for example, at Chainflow, the infrastructure we build, we hope eventually builds an alternative to the current economy, which we see as inequitable, pretty exclusive, and unfair. So we hope that building the principles of decentralization into all these great things that are being built on top of Solana ultimately create an economy that is much more inclusive, much more equitable, and much more fair, which means really anybody can participate, opening up financial freedom for a wider swath of humanity, if you will, than we have today.
Great, thank you. So there's kind of a couple axes I wanted to maybe start exploring, that we've talked about in the past. There's one sort of, would say network infrastructure is a major factor that we talk about when we look at single points of failure or distribution of power and data and its distribution. So I want to talk about this idea of network infrastructure, geographic decentralization, and then I want to talk a little bit about economic decentralization and kind of how Solana is doing on each of those parts. So you guys helped us launch Solana. There were a couple dozen validators, right? This was 2.5, 3 years ago. And today, the network stands, there's close to 2,000 validators, 1,400 RPC nodes in, I think, 33 countries all over the world. So I think we're doing pretty good. But Felix, maybe you can kind of talk to what have you seen around this geographic spread of Solana and sort of what does that mean for any sort of centralizing or decentralizing factors?
Sure, yeah. First of all, yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here and great to see a second Breakpoint being such a success and being back in Lisbon where I actually stay, so it's awesome. I think really what always struck us about Solana was really important was that there was a lot of value put on the validators of the system actually running the network, from the very beginning by running the Tour de Sol and really being supportive of people that join the network to kind of just maintain it, which is not necessarily true in other ecosystems. And I think the Solana Foundation kind of delegation program really took that also to a new level where you really kind of introduced metrics to look at kind of the data center concentration and kind of distribute the stake based on these things, which I think really helped foster a more broad validator ecosystem, because obviously there is kind of a limit to how many people actually want to run a validator and maybe even turn it into an actual business to do it full time. I think there's a bunch of hobbyists and then there's basically a bunch of professional validators, and I think the Solana Foundation does a great job at trying to bring people that maybe want to run on node on their own, kind of kickstart their journey into becoming a professional validator. And you can obviously see the success of it in the geographies and just the number of validators that are out there. Surely with Solana, I guess one of the issues is you actually need very good network and the infrastructure or hardware. So that makes it a little bit harder to run it all over the place. So you have kind of a concentration, obviously, in the US, in Europe. But I guess these are things that hopefully will be solved in the long run as the other regions like Africa and stuff maybe will get more better infrastructure there to have also more validators in such regions. But overall, I think very good trajectory and amazing work so far. So
thank you. Yeah, and just sort of follow on point on that. This has been and still remains the core tenet of what Solana Foundation is here for, is to continue to foster the decentralization of Solana. And that comes in many forms. And we initially have focused on the validator network itself, helping more validators learn how to operate on the network, how to get stake through Foundation's delegation program. As Felix mentioned, there tends to be, and we see this in a lot of proof-of-stake networks, concentrations in North America and Western Europe. We've been working with a number of service providers, some of whom are here. They're in the back corner. Go say hello. That are really Solana-friendly. They're very crypto-friendly and want to help spread the validator infrastructure to the far corners of the earth, to wherever the users are. There is a need for Solana nodes, Solana infrastructure, Solana RPC operators. And so Foundation has really been advocating with a lot of these big companies who really knew nothing about crypto a handful of years ago to understand sort of the unique needs of the network to help bring more avenues for our users. So Chris, I kind of want to talk about this idea of economic decentralization. There's one metric we often talk about, Nakamoto coefficient. Refers to kind of the distribution or concentration of stake on a subset of validators. I know you have Nakaflow. You do a lot of research comparing Nakamoto coefficient and stake concentration on various proof-of-stake networks. So maybe can you kind of talk to what this is, why does it matter, and how does Solana compare in sort of the broader proof-of-stake crypto ecosystem?
Sure. So I guess in the shortest version is the Nakamoto coefficient is the number of validators that control 33% of stake on the network. And in the case of, 33% gives a lot of power to those validators that control 33% of stake on the network. So we feel the Nakamoto coefficient is a meaningful metric of essentially how decentralized stake on the network is. Again, it's not the only metric, and we'll get into some of the other metrics that matter too. But we find that it's often difficult to talk about decentralization. And we think the Nakamoto coefficient is one way to get the idea of decentralization across to a wide variety of people. And it's also a pretty easy metric to compare. Well, it's a metric to compare across networks. So we have a site called nakaflow.io, and we monitor the Nakamoto coefficient on about 15 different networks. And for Solana is consistently at the top, which is good news. I looked today, Solana's at about 30, so that means 30 validators control 33% of the network. And when you look at many of the others, 30 is consistently at the top. Most of the others fall around, you have everything from very low single digits, like 2 or 3. There's another consolidation around maybe 6 or 7. And then once you get up to 30, 30 is looking pretty strong comparatively. There's one other network that, 1 or 2 other networks that bounce around up there too, but 30 comparatively to the other networks we track look pretty strong.
Can you maybe speak to a little bit, what are some of the limitations of looking at this particular number, right? It serves as a useful metric, but kind of, can you maybe elaborate, like what parts of the story does this sort of just numerical metric fail to, what parts of the story does it not always get across?
Sure. So when I think about decentralization, I think at 2 very broad levels. The first level is the capital level, and then the next level is the infrastructure level. So the Nakamoto coefficient starts to tell the story at the capital accumulation level. And capital accumulation has typically been a barrier of entry in the current economy, so I watch that carefully to see if it'll continue to be a barrier to entry in this new economy we're building. So it starts to tell a pretty good story at the capital layer. However, I looked today, of the 30 validators, in the Solana Nakamoto coefficient, there are probably about 10 that are running anonymously. So we really don't know who is running those nodes. So it could be that there's one entity that's actually running multiple validators. Within that 30, we don't know. So that's one limitation. We don't necessarily know who is running all the validators in not just the Solana Nakamoto coefficient, but any other network too. So to really understand what the Nakamoto coefficient means and how useful it is, you have to understand the actual operator or the capital owner behind the validator you see in that list. The second part, I'd say that the Nakamoto coefficient we show is really the capital Nakamoto coefficient, the infrastructure Nakamoto coefficient that tools like Validators app will start to show the second really important vector when it comes to decentralization, which is the infrastructure layer. And that is basically saying things like, how many validators are operating out of which provider, how many operators are operating out of which data center. And as we've seen recently with what happened with one of the biggest providers, Hetzner, or previous providers, Hetzner, this matters a lot too. So the Nakamoto coefficient when you're talking about capital accumulation and capital distribution is one vector, but infrastructure is another big vector, if not as important a vector.
Yeah. A common criticism that I think we tend to see on Solana and externally a little bit more broadly on proof-of-stake networks is this, seeing this capital flow to, the highly staked validators, this, because people say, oh, well, these stakers, don't care about decentralization or maybe are just uninformed or have different opinions. There's kind of this common theme that it's not just capital concentration, but it's access to capital, access to being able to run your own validator, to participate in the network either through, reading blockchain data if you're running RPCs, APIs, or the ability to, join the network and be a block producer. One thing that, I think Solana in the early days had received some criticism for is that the technical and the hardware requirements to run a validator are quite high compared to, I'll say, earlier proof-of-stake networks. And this is true, they are higher. And the reality is hardware gets cheaper, internet gets faster year over year. And so this is, we want to come in with the strongest tech, the most innovative tech, and that requires kind of pushing the boundaries on a lot of different fronts. And hardware was one of them where we can squeeze out this performance that we have on Solana. And a lot of people have argued in the past that this is a centralizing factor on Solana. The cost to run a validator is quite high. The operating costs are high. The intellectual barrier is high. Felix, I'm wondering maybe kind of what your thoughts are on that. Is this a driver of centralization on Solana or a different take?
Obviously, I think there are basically trade-offs, right, that every network will make in terms of how much they want to enable decentralization. Obviously, one of the factors there is how much hardware or how hard is it to run a node on really that hardware level, or and there obviously it is more required of you to run a Solana validator than maybe one Ethereum node. This is obviously kind of also an architectural choice of Solana and how it can achieve such a high throughput, because it is maybe more limited and you don't need to have so much communication overhead. So one of the maybe also untold stories going a bit back is that kind of the more validators you add, the more vote transactions there are, the more kind of slower the block times potentially get. So there's really this trade-off where you want to kind of be somewhere in between. You want to have enough nodes that it is decentralized, whatever that means to you. So the Nakamoto coefficient might be one of the metrics there, that you basically don't want just a few entities to be able to hold your network or something, but you also want to add so many validators that the network gets super slow and the applications can't run on it anymore. So I think finding this balance is something that we also try to help people do. And I think there are multiple tools, for example, to calculate how much would you earn if you're in a certain validator in the set. You can maybe calculate your operating costs. You can see the vote fees, how much you would be paying, and then basically as a validator you need to figure out if that's profitable for you, right? There's a certain break-even point essentially of amount of stake that you need to be profitable, and then I guess for you as validator this might be the calculation that you need to do to kind of figure out, should I join Solana network? Do I have the chance to get into the set and stay on top of this break-even line, essentially. And I guess the network or foundation and the community at large can kind of maybe communicate with each other what is the level of number of nodes that we find reasonable, that we need to actually be decentralized, because there's obviously this trade-off, decentralization and performance.
Right. So one kind of train of thought I've been debating with some folks recently is, this idea that, decentralization as an ideal is wonderful, but I think decentralization should also be profitable. I think people should be able to act in their own self-interest, as people naturally do. They want privacy, they want security, they want the ability to have create business models and revenue streams and make money and just have a prosperous life. And how can people seeking in their own self-interest, advance decentralization? And one of the things we've been talking about is, like you said, requirements to run a validator are high, but if someone can, say, make a capital risk and says, I'm going to put in the time to invest in learning and research and acquire high-quality hardware, and I'm going to run my own node, put a shingle out there, work to attract stake, because they want to succeed on the network. This would hopefully and naturally increase decentralization if there is, a path to victory, a path to profit, basically, for people who want to run their own node. And so I would actually argue that decentralization will be an emergent property, or I'll say further decentralization and self-sustaining long-term decentralization of the network would be an emergent property of a well-adopted and successful network with lots of users on it. So how do we get there? Two kind of big tools that have come up in the last year or so are stake pools and MEV, which can provide additional possible stake, revenue streams, and provide sort of a more competitive landscape for validators to differentiate themselves. So Chris, maybe can you talk a little bit about what you see on stake pools and this idea of liquid staking on Solana? Is it beneficial? Has it succeeded in providing these opportunities, and kind of what work remains?
Sure. So I think the algorithmic stake pools are a really good idea. I've always been a fan of algorithmic, meaning that if you delegate to a stake pool, there's an algorithm in place that then delegates to a selected number of validators based on certain criteria. And the algorithms I typically favor are the algorithms that take decentralization into account. For example, if you already have a lot of stake, you're not going to get a lot of stake. If you're in a data center that already has a lot of validators, you're probably not going to get a lot of stake either. So I really support these algorithmic stake pools in that I think that it's an easy way for a delegator who cares about decentralization to make a difference. I think in terms of aligning economic incentives at the same time for the delegator, it also spreads risk because you don't really have to think about who you're staking to. You trust the algorithm, which is open source and transparent, to stake to good validators for you. And if a validator goes down, you don't have to worry about restaking yourself. Essentially, the pool is going to do it for you. So I think that stake pools are a really strong tool to increase decentralization on the network in the long term. I think the uptake on it so far isn't where it could be and should be. And I think the more we can get stake into algorithmic stake pools, the more decentralized the network will be over the long term.
Great. And Felix, Chorus One was one of the early and kind of major developers of Lido. You helped bring Lido to Lido liquid staking to Solana. I'm kind of curious, what's your take? How does Lido view this? This topic, and how is sort of the Lido adoption on Solana kind of moving us in a centralization or decentralization direction?
Right, yeah, totally. I think, generally speaking, right, stake pools enable what you said, like basically distributing based on some algorithmic choice. Lido has so far kind of taken the another approach to stake distribution, which is more governance-based and kind of looking at the operators by evaluating them subjectively on like different criteria, and also trying to generate a validator set that is diverse and professional in its operations. And I think maybe like one of the core, like I guess, issue or things that can appear in a stake pool that is algorithmic and really like looks a lot at the performance. So I think can happen that you try to stake a lot to like 0% commission validators, for example, and by that kind of accelerate this race to the bottom for validators that they basically don't earn on providing security to the network, and in the end, that will obviously then kind of put them out of business. Even if they were able to gather stake, they maybe can only stake in the stake pool set if they have 0 commission, so it doesn't really get them anything. So I think there's a certain problem there, but overall I see a lot of potential in stake pools and kind of like experimentation in terms of how to distribute stake and diversify the risk for the sole holders that might not necessarily want to think about which validator should I stake to. And but yeah, I guess there's different types of users and token holders that have different preferences. Some might want to really choose the validator that does the most to contribute to the ecosystem, what they think, or they just go to a stake pool and know they're diversified. So yeah, really like the experimentation. I think it has succeeded to a certain extent. Obviously, it's pretty low adoption still on Solana overall compared to, let's say, Ethereum, where their like liquid staking is very dominating, which is also because of the design of Ethereum staking that is much more not so great in the first place for delegation and for this system of token holders to participate passively in staking. So liquid staking has captured much more market share there.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so what we're starting to see here with stake pools and you know the next thing I want to talk about is the more, as I see it, the more diverse opportunities there are for people to run infrastructure. Just like we've kind of seen with like the DeFi boom in DeFi summer, there were people doing all this experimentation, creating all of these new economic models, trying experiments, some succeeding wildly, some failing wildly, but really creating this really rich ecosystem in which people can build innovative products. And what I'm starting to see, and what I'm really hopeful to see on Solana, is that same kind of economic robustness and a broader playing field for profit and for success at the infrastructure level itself. One really hot topic that comes up around revenue and infrastructure is MEV, right? Maximum extractable value. We've been hearing a lot about MEV on Solana these last couple days, and it doesn't come without risks. A lot of people are concerned that MEV might be a risk to centralization, and I'm kind of curious what, Chris, maybe you can kind of speak to what your view is on that. What are the risks and kind of what are the positive opportunities we might see?
Sure, I'm going to keep the headphones over here. Yeah, I think MEV in general is a positive for validator diversification, especially for smaller operators that don't have the resources to build these tools themselves. So I'm pretty optimistic of it from that perspective. There is the risk, for example, Solana is such a high-speed network that in order to benefit from certain solutions like Jito, for example, validators have to be co-located with the Jito block engines. So for example, Jito now is deployed in Frankfurt first. There's a lot of stake already in Frankfurt, so Jito is also going out and saying, please don't move to Frankfurt because we don't need more stake there. We're going to be deploying other places soon. So I think there is that risk that this can cause further geographic centralization. But I think in terms of capital decentralization, it can be a pretty powerful tool.
Great, thank you. One last question, or kind of topic I want to touch on while we still have a couple minutes here, is the software itself. We've had some really exciting announcements and a fantastic demo here on stage yesterday from Kevin Bowers on the FireDancer team. So as we've been hearing about FireDancer, it's this new implementation for the Solana validator. It's going to have all these wonderful performance improvements. And why do we care from a decentralization standpoint? Why is this better? Solana is the only, outside of Ethereum, is the only proof of stake network to have like a fully independent implementation. Felix, can you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, yeah, very important like work stream, and super amazing that someone is working on a second client. I think also because it's gonna kind of improve the spec of the actual Solana client and the Solana Labs client itself. Why you need multiple clients is simply because if you have one client and that has a bug or isn't working, then it can take your entire network down, obviously. If you have like multiple clients, that kind of lowers this risk. I think, yeah, it probably helps to think a little bit about, we had it already, that there is kind of this architectural decentralization layer, and then kind of the capital, or let's say political decentralization, which is more about who holds the stake, who runs the nodes, who are the entities that actually run them. And I guess the client diversity question is within that architectural level. But I think, now on this talk, unfortunately, we only had like half an hour, and we mostly talked, I guess, about kind of the node, the infrastructure side. I think client diversity is obviously one that Solana now is approaching and even improving, but there's still like also other, I think, avenues of decentralization, kind of, for example, who writes the code, who gets to make decisions about the parameters of Solana, and there is obviously, I think, still also like work to be done, I think, and could also be an interesting other discussion, obviously, of how maybe one could involve more people there. Obviously, with Jump building Fire Dancer, I think that's already like one kind of big contributor that will obviously like play a big role there and learn a lot. I think also with like Jito and other teams that work really close on the core code base, that is like there's more and more teams building on that level too. And yeah, I'm super excited to like see where this is going to take Solana. So yeah, really excited about this development.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we are at time, so thank you both. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. What a great panel. Killer. So we've reached the last talk of our stage, last talk of the laboratory, which is really exciting. Just before we get started, I just want to give a huge shout out to all the people who have worked to make this event possible, given up their weekends to come here and make sure that we're all happy, fed, safe, that we have everything that we need, from the lighting, the sound, those headphones in the back, all the food. So really appreciate all the help from everyone here at the Paseo de Gala and all of our venues across Lisbon, and really excited to see everyone tonight at the closing party at 9 p.m. So without further ado, I want to introduce our final speaker of the day, Sebastian Bohr from Solana Labs, just a brilliant engineer who I have the pleasure of working with a lot. He's going to talk about all things SPL governance. So please give it up for Sebastian.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sebastian Bohr, and I work for Labs. And I used to say that I'm professional glass eater, but it's not funny and not relevant any longer. Solana development became so easy. So today, Sebastian just developer. And I'm going to talk about SPL governance, which is a contract about contract for building on-chain governance for DAOs, but also for really any type of organization on-chain. So first, I'm going to talk about the design, architecture of the contract, the current state. But in the second part, I'm going to talk about the road ahead and the interesting projects that we are working on and that I'm really like, want to unleash to the world. All right. So SPL governance, we always talk SPL governance, and this is the main contract. It is DAO or organization type, asset type, and governance type agnostic. It means it's like Lego blocks that you can take and choose the ones you want to build the type of organization you want, the type of assets you want to manage, and the type of governance, right? So it's not prescriptive. You can choose this, whatever you want, and build the organization you need. On top of that, we have several other programs. Like one of them, the type, I call them add-ons. So add-ons like the SPL governance chat is a program that SPL governance knows nothing about, but the SPL governance still can use the governance rules, your proposals to create comments on that, but it will respect your roles, right? So you can only comment on the proposal when you're a DAO member, and it knows all of that. The other type of programs, I call them add-ins or plugins. So those are the programs that SPL governance knows about it and has like defined interface how to work with them. And for those programs, we have a governance program library. So that's a set of Anchor programs, because SPL governance is not Anchor. But all those plugins are written in Anchor with your favorite tools. And if you want to check how to write those programs, or you want to add your own, this is the place to go. All right, so we know that programs on Solana are composable. We can take different programs and compose them together. But usually, the way it happens is you have to do CPI calls, you need developer skills. But if you add the magic ingredient, which is governance, on-chain governance, a magic happens. Because this is what I call plug-and-play architecture. It allows you to compose higher-order products from other programs. And this is the architecture we use extensively for SPL governance and for DAO tooling. But I think this is something that really not enough explored on Solana. Because this way, in no-code fashion, just any user can create those contracts, those solutions, right? And like in SPL governance, we have some of those general-purpose plugins. This is what everybody can use. And one of them is voter stake registry, sometimes known as Mango Locker, because this is what has been developed by Mango. And it allows you to create these vested escrow tokens. So in order to get the governance power, you have to lock your tokens. The more you lock, the more governance power you get, right? So the idea is, if you lock your tokens for 4 years, it means you have skin in the game, which means you're unlikely to really harm the DAO or do something which would harm it, right? Then we have NFT voter plugin. NFT voter plugin allows you to use your NFTs as governance power. By default, the configuration is you have one NFT, one vote, but really you can modify it. You can have multiple NFTs. And something interesting that has been recently released is the Raindrops protocol, because Raindrops protocol puts the trades on chain. That means that we can create and design governance structure where you can get extra roles, extra governance power based on the trades of your NFT. Right now, without Raindrops, it's not possible because the trades are off-chain in some JSON file, right? So Raindrops enables that. And I think that kind of interesting possibilities. We also have a civic gateway. So you know those are the specialists for identity. And if you want to make sure that your DAO members are humans, if you want to make sure that your DAO members vote, they are unique, this is the same person cannot try to vote multiple times and do Sybil attack, this is what you can use the Civic Gateway plugin. The interesting thing about the plugins in general and the Gateway one in particular is that you can compose them. You can use NFT voter with the Civic Gateway plugin, right? So you can say, you can vote with your NFTs, but you also have to be a human, right? Or you can vote with NFTs, but you cannot vote multiple times, right? So all those interesting options are possible. And of course, on top of that, you can create custom plugins. And the custom plugins is just your Rust skills and imagination, and you can do whatever you want. And we have plugins built by unique venture clubs with extra roles and permissions from PIFs, from Serum, from Jet. And actually, I just learned this morning I should add helium on this slide. I think this is super cool. They told me that once they're done with the plugin, I won't recognize my baby. Bring it on. I want to see it. All right. So the current state. What we have on mainnet is version v3. v3 is the next release. You can see it has been audited by Otter Security. It's ready to go. The only reason it is not on mainnet yet is because we don't have all those features in the UI, and this is why we are waiting for this. But some of the DAOs, like Serum, they already released and using that version. This is something important to remember, that SPL governance can be, you can use the default instance, but really what I encourage you is to use your custom instance, because this way the DAO really, or the organization owns the contract. And when you ask Max from Mango, he says that the contract is like constitution for the DAO, right? So it shouldn't be managed constitution by anybody else. by just the DAO members. So I think that's the best way to go. And if you really looking for any of those features for your DAO, that can be deployed. It's ready to go. And some of the interesting features that in V3 is the council governance plugins. So the plugins before were only possible to customize the governance structure for the community, but now you can do the same for the councils. And this is kind of interesting because you can do, right? You can create something like elections, or like somebody had an idea to pick the council members randomly from the community and then kick them off randomly as well. So you kind of like those interesting governance solutions that you can create. Also, now we support something which is called membership tokens. It means that whenever you are a member of the council or community, you can get those tokens which cannot be transferred, and also the DAO can revoke. In the current version, in V2, that's not possible. And the only way for a member to leave a DAO or leave the council is they have to burn the council tokens themselves, right? So that's super cool. Another thing about the councils is the council, like the idea of the council was always to protect the DAO at inception, because being a DAO on-chain organization is not a state, it's a process, and the process that you really have to think about it. And the idea of the council is to protect it, right? Because when you start the DAO, you don't know what's your community, what kind of governance structure you need, and you have to be very careful, and the council allows you to protect that. And in the version 3, we just gave it more like explicit options that you can choose. So you can give the council only veto vote, or you can change the approval quorum, or you can give it like a fast forward voting, like you want to update a critical change to like security upgrade to your program. You obviously don't want to vote for 1 week for the community when everybody can see it and steal your money. So council could step in and create fast forward votes. So all those things are quite interesting. And again, if this is any of this you need, we can deploy right now. Been security reviewed, is open back. All right, so okay, the road ahead. So that's the interesting bit, right? So I think we all agree that that's the future, right? This is Sagaphone, if you don't know. And, and really, in order to reach out to and create first-class experience for users, we need mobiles. And the good news is we have 2 great teams from the ecosystem, Gilder, which the application already exists, is being used by many DAOs, decided to join forces with Bastion, our latest hackathon winner, and they are building the mobile DAO app and wallet. And this is super cool. I think this is super cool. It's like we are hoping to give the DAOs like a, again, first-class mobile experience. Obviously, that's not easy, and there's like a lot of things that we still have to do and we have to build. And some of them are done, some of them are planned, and like that's my like favorite is the dynamic thresholds. If you want to take your DAO wallet and pay for a coffee, then you don't really want to create a proposal when the whole DAO has to vote, right? What I'm saying, $1, 1 signature, and you can do that, right? If you want to take 1 million, you need 60% of the DAO to agree. And this is what we are building. It's not possible yet, but that should enable this experience. Then this is like very technical. That was preventing us from interacting of the DAO wallet with any dApp. Yeah, this is like a Solana specific that when you create a new account, you create these ephemeral accounts where you create it for very short of time, you sign the transaction with it, and then you dispose it. And obviously, it works with normal dApps, but with proposals, it won't, because the proposal is like set in the stone. You cannot change that. And that was like a recent great PR by Guillermo from Pith. He figured it out. And this is like really, really good news, if you know what I'm talking about, that now we can create any number of those. So we can create any number of dynamic accounts in a proposal. This is super cool. And the next one is also PR is ready, because yes, if you need 1 signature to buy a coffee, that's great, right? But what happens if you do this like 1 million times, right? For you, it's good. You have 1 million coffees, but not so good for DAO. And what the programmatic signatories option gives you is it allows you to create contracts which can validate the proposal. So you can create things like spending limit for individual person in the DAO, or you can create a spending limit for the whole DAO, for the whole treasury. So for example, yes, you can pay from the DAO treasury for a coffee, but let's say no more than once a day, right? Too restrictive for me, but I don't know. OK, so the next thing, Grape. Lighthouse, we know that currently the main model for governance is based on tokens, right? But it's not quite right, because it means that whales have more votes. And the more tokens, the more money, the more wealthy you are, the more you can say. And we need a better way. We kind of don't know what's the better way. And I call this Grape formula, because if anybody is going to figure it out, it's going to be Grape. I believe in them. And together with Lighthouse, they are building this reputation and membership tokens, which can be through a plugin, can be used for additional governance. And that will be another plugin. And it's extremely hard. So we had a very great workshop yesterday where we discussed different ideas and different options. So I'm very optimistic it can be done, and Grape is going to do it. All right, Civic. If you're talking about digital IDs or any digital identity, those are the guys you have to talk to. And we know we can have our own ID, digital IDs for us personally, but if we can have an organization, shouldn't that organization also have identity? And we are doing just right that. We are adding an option for digital IDs for DAOs, so they will have digital identity. So I mean, if you know what I'm talking about, normal pull request to add an icon to your DAO, normal pull request to add description, because all of that can be captured in the digital ID of your DAO. And next thing, it's we all want to have digital IDs, DAOs, we as people. But what if you lose them? I mean, aren't you afraid? When I talk to most of my friends who are not crypto, they say, I want a credit card. If I lose my credit card, I call my bank and I get the credit card back, right? I'm not losing all my money. And now, how we can do that? But how does it work? We just trust some random unknown people in the bank that are going to verify and return the credit card to us, not to somebody else. And using Civic, you can actually replicate the same mechanism on chain. The idea is that you can create your social recovery DAO, which is like your friends, your family, and whenever you lose your ID, you just ask them to vouch for you and get it back. I think that's super cool. And you can see the screenshot. It's already available, and I think you can use it, right? All soon. And least not last, quadratic voting and CB resistance. This is also important because that allows you to, quadratic voting allows you to give more power to individual members, because the more tokens you have, your voting power is diminishing. And obviously, that's nice, but if you cannot prevent similar resistant attacks, when multiple people prevent to be the same, then it's useless. So Civic solves both problems. There's PR pending for quadratic voting, and also CB resistance is supported by the Civic plugin. All right, so community projects. I really love working with the community. And if you don't know, Mango was the original DAO that launched on Solana, on this DAO tooling. If you saw Anatoly's presentation, that was the one DAO on August last year. That was Mango. We launched with them, and really, Realms, SPL governance wouldn't have existed without them. That was, big shout out to Mango for help, and they're still working with us. The interesting thing we are working with them is governance rewards. Where the idea is that you can, when you participate with the governance, you should be rewarded for that. And there is a contract that allows you to create that distribution. But also, we have now Marinade. I think probably you know them. Usually what they do, they cook some steak pools or something like that, right? I don't remember. But now we work with them on more governance structures. And something that's very important is aggregated delegation. We know that governance is a chore. People don't want to participate. The participation is usually low. And SPL governance supports delegation, but this is like one-to-one. So it's usually used for hot wallets. So you don't have to keep like a vote or participate with governance with your ledger. You can delegate to your hot wallet, and then you can do everything with that hot wallet. Obviously, 100 people can delegate to the same person, but if that person votes, then that means you have to cast the vote 100 times. That's not really efficient. And this is what Marinate is working on, is this aggregated delegation, where you can delegate to one person, and then that person votes and represents all the others with that governance power. So we're hoping that we should make governance much easier. But that's not all. Marinate is also helping us with new voting systems, with weighted votes and gauges and conviction voting. So conviction voting is kind of interesting because there is no time boxing. So you just specify your preference and you keep it like that. And the more you are convinced this is the preference, how the time passes, the more important your decision becomes. But also, if you change your mind, you lose everything, right? So it's kind of interesting type of governance because it's less work. Because if you're really convinced that something should be done that way, you can just cast your vote and leave it like that forever, and your weight grows. But also, it shows that you really, really have to believe in something to vote like that. So lots of interesting stuff. And last but not least, I think we know that governance is not easy. It's not easy to manage large organizations. And what we think the solution is divide and conquer. And what I'm showing you is divide with conquer with squads. So the idea is that instead of voting on using the whole DAO every time for every vote, we create those pockets of authority. And those pockets of authority can then manage themselves. And you can already do this with multi-sigs. But what's really important is the mesh protocol from squads, because it allows you to create this any type of organization structure. And most important thing, that the DAO remains authority over the structure. So some, like those multi-sigs and smaller teams don't behave, the DAO has authority to change that, to change member. And that hopefully should solve the problem of participations and making DAOs more efficient. OK, so that's all from me. That's the QR code to our Discord server. If you have any questions, technical questions, please join. I'm usually hanging there and happy to answer any questions. Or if there are any questions right now, we are already like 2 minutes over time, but I think that's the last session. We can afford it. All right? Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sebastian. Really love that presentation. It's incredible how much DAO tooling has improved even in the last few months. It's incredible to see the pace of change. So that concludes our programming. Thank you, everyone, for being here at the laboratory. It's been 3 days of amazing sessions. Hope you've learned a lot and taken a lot away from this. Please join us tonight at 9 o'clock for the closing ceremony party. But otherwise, thank you and have a great trip home.